This is Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is a meeting of the Select Board for April 18, 2023. We're going to go into executive session. The board will now enter executive session to discuss strategy with respect to bargaining. They're entering into executive session because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Select Board, a public body, which the chair hereby declares to be necessary. All in favor of going into executive session? John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay,
We'll be back.
and we will return after executive session, approximately 5:30 or so. Okay.
All right.
Good evening. I'm Bernard Green, Chair of the Brookline Select Board, and this is the Select Board meeting of April 18, 2023. We were out of executive session and let's start off with announcements and updates from the Select Board. Anyone want to say anything?
Well,
don't you want to talk about?
I do. I was stalling for time. I thought maybe somebody else would want to go first. But I'm happy to go first. I have been, on a regular basis previewing the marathon as it involves Team Brookline, which is the team of charity runners who raise money for various charities in Brookline. And I think last week I reported that Bernard and I had been there. Well, actually, I don't know if I've reported that yet. We were there for their kickoff, their send-off, let's call it their send-off, at which they announced that they had raised $334,000. The race has now been run, and Team Brookline performed spectacularly. And in fact, now the total that they have raised is $355,000. And I think that's pretty spectacular. In fact, it's a record. Team Brookline ranked 18 among all 267 Boston Marathon 2023 charity teams. Go Team Brookline. And this is the 10th year of fundraising by Team Brookline. And it has now been announced that over 10 years, Team Brookline has raised over $3 million. And that's for, I'm going to try to name them from memory. I hope I get it right. The Teen Center, the Brookline Library Foundation, the Brookline Educational Foundation, Brookline Symphony, and Brookline Center for Community Mental Health. And finally, just as sort of icing on the cake, Team Brookline runners Lakshman Swami, Zach Broken Rope, and Ben French were interviewed, I think it was this morning, on NPR, and sort of shared their insights as to marathon, what it's like to run a marathon, and why marathon runners love audiobooks. I think I can guess the answer to that question. If you Google search NPR and runners in the Boston Marathon audiobooks, I think you'll probably find the audio of that particular feature, which I'm sure is worth listening to.
Right. And then I want to say something about the marathon also.
Oh, well, why don't you go ahead, because I have something that's totally, it'll break the spell, and it's a very pleasant thing to listen to. What I'm going to talk about is sort of in between.
Okay. So at the dinner at the Teen Center before the marathon, I talked to Coach Rick, and he told me something that I think is interesting, but also a good story that people should know. And that is that charity runners, at least our charity runners, have a higher completion rate of the marathon than any other category of runners, including the elite runners, as well as the very athletic regular runners with bibs that they earned at other marathons. And that's really interesting, because these are people who are just regular people, not great athletes, but just regular people who have decided to run a marathon. And it just shows how powerful the human mind is when it puts itself to a task, even a very difficult task. And I think that's very, very interesting, and something that people should be aware of and take to heart in terms of what we can do if we just put our mind to it. So
can I say one more thing just in connection with that?
yeah.
So you might help me with this data point, but the way I remember it is that Coach Rick said that he, over the course of 10 years, that he has trained over 300 charity runners, and that only 2 out of the 300 ever did not finish. Right. And personal opinion on his part, they probably overshot when they applied to be on the team in terms of their capabilities, but only 2 out of 300. Yeah. did not finish. So if you're out there and you want to finish a marathon, volunteer for Team Brookline next year. But the competition is getting more and more tough. I think they had over 90 applicants for the 30 Team Brookline positions this year. But it's really worth a shot if you've dreamed of running the marathon. It's a great way to do it.
Okay, Mike.
So,
I see Miriam also has her hand up. So, go ahead,
Uh-oh,
Mike.
I can't hear her. She's
She's on
talking.
mute.
But we can hear her.
Oh,
okay. So I want to just ask you
Can
to
I say
remember something.
something real quick before you might? Because I don't know what you're going to say, but mine is completely trivial. So I don't want to like follow you if you're saying something important.
Go ahead then, say something trivial because I don't know how important this is, but it's not
Okay.
light.
Okay. So just for those, and I see there's a quite large participant list. So just for those that don't know, I am out of the country with my daughter. It's school vacation week, like Chaz, we're on vacation. So I will be leaving this meeting early because we have dinner plans. So just wanted to know why I disappear at some point. And thank you. That's it.
Right. So you, I think we all recall last week we had some public comment by members of the Black and Brown Club that, as I said at the time, was not well calibrated to make us look favorably on the organization. We were really excoriated. And since then, in fact, the day after, I received an email from one of the folks who spoke here and said that they had, in fact, been in touch with the volunteer counseling, business startup counseling organization that I suggested, SCORE, and with the Community Foundation, and that they were interested in following up on trying to work with us on setting up affordable childcare using the funds that we've set aside. That is something that we obviously will need to have a conversation with both them and ourselves about, and with the Community Foundation as well, because they would be a necessary participant in this. I will say that there is now a video on the blackandbrownnews.com website that has a great deal of misinformation about the town of Brookline and the process that the ARPA committee followed. And certainly that is a great concern. It's going to be very difficult to work with an organization that spreads misinformation about us. And I hope that that will be corrected. Thank you.
okay. Anything else? Okay, let's go to public comment. John, you want to read the rules?
I would be happy to read the rules, and thank you to those who are going to join us for public comment. It's an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. We have a few rules I'd like to share. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. We encourage you to refrain from personal attacks and from addressing personnel issues during your comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to your question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. We'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you're welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Devin, who is first?
The first person signed up for public comment is Deborah Brown. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Deborah Brown, Brookline resident. And I guess congratulations on the Brookline marathon runners. I'll stick a couple of things in here as I'll be contacting them to figure out how we can include their organizations that they support to include affordable housing. Not necessarily my organization, but there are a lot of folks out there doing work to help people improve the quality of their housing. I guess the second piece of it is too, that I know that the town received some funding for its contributions to the marathon. And again, I'd like to hope that some of that money goes to improve the quality of life, in particular for disadvantaged young people. One of the things that, as I heard the conversation about the marathon and the success, you know, it made me think about success. It made me ask the question, what are the town successes? And recently I was on the Lower Boylston Study Committee. And I sent around an email and I said, if I had to give my 2 years of experience with that committee a grade, I'd give it a failing grade. And I give it a failing grade because it was an opportunity for the town to figure out, to come up with a template to begin to develop areas of this town that are essentially, you know, underperforming, either in terms of housing, in terms of, you know, just being a neighborhood, or for that matter, economic development. And we missed that opportunity. And I'm disappointed, but it's not unique. It's sort of the way that we do work. You know, we're the gang that gets started and then doesn't get anything across the finish line, but we're also the gang that doesn't figure out how to hold ourselves accountable for that. And so I know right now that we haven't done much to get, you know, a Newberry College study off the ground to figure out how we can put affordable housing there. Well, why are we still kicking the housing production plan around? MBTA communities? Well, that is just a blight on this community that we have any kind of dissension around that.
You have 30 seconds.
And lastly, you know, the fact that AC would actually say that they want to defund planning, shame on all of us if we don't speak up. And so I'm asking you all to begin to think about, what does success look like? What have you done well? And if you haven't finished something, how do you finish it? So much like, you know, those runners were very successful, I want the town to be very successful. But as I ran through my short list of issues, we get a failing grade.
You've reached 3 minutes.
So thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Raul Fernandez. You can join us at the presentation station, and the chair has given you 4 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Raul Fernandez, Chair of Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity, also known as Bridge. As you know, our proposal for $475,000 in federal ARPA funding was unanimously recommended for full funding by your Brookline ARPA Submission Review Committee, a recommendation that was presented to this board last Tuesday, yet has been singled out and held up by the Select Board. It should be noted that our organization met all of the eligibility criteria and submitted our proposal completely and on time, meeting all rules and requirements promulgated by the federal government and the town of Brookline. I was present for every committee meeting along with other Bridge board members and answered questions as they arose. Our proposal includes clear objectives, intended impacts, expected outcomes, and a workable implementation strategy for advancing racial justice in Brookline. And the committee you established certainly found it compelling enough to recommend full funding. In fact, no one, including yourselves, has taken issue with any aspect of our proposed activities. Yet at last week's select board meeting, our proposal was singled out for scrutiny and held over, not because of the proposal, but because of who submitted it. One board member questioned our ability as a new organization to deliver on our proposal. While Bridge recently became a nonprofit organization, we have been a member-based community organization advocating for racial justice in Brookline since 2016. Our efforts individually and collectively have been broad, addressing racial discrimination, unaffordable housing, public health, educational disparities, and more. Moreover, our brilliant 13-member board, composed predominantly of people of color, including Asian, Black, Indigenous, and Latinx members, has the deep experience and personal commitment necessary to deliver on every aspect of our ARPA proposal. We include a former select board member, a past chair of your Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, current and former residents of public housing, the board chair of the North American Indian Center of Boston, the co-founder of Mutual Aid Brookline, the director of Brookline's METCO program, and the executive director of Harvard Center for Health and Human Rights, as well as an expert fundraiser, an acclaimed artist, an educator with 45 years teaching experience, and more. No objective reviewer could read through our proposal and look at our board and conclude that this group would have any issues delivering on that proposal. Another board member was more clear in his concerns, again, taking no issue with the proposal itself, but rather the politics of those of us making the proposal. When asked to weigh in, town council was clear that the board could not hold past political activities against the organization. That, of course, includes any of the constitutionally protected individual political activities of individual board members. The day after the meeting, more detail on an already heavily detailed proposal was requested by the board chair and supplied that same day. Yet here we are a week later, and our proposal is still not being considered by this board. So let me say what any independent observer knows to be true. The added scrutiny, unnecessary delays, and attempted scuttling of our proposal is arbitrary and capricious and clearly driven by personal and political animus. Look, I get it. Our politics have not aligned, but retaliating against us because of a political vendetta is unallowable and illegal. What's happening here has been unjust. We've been patient and respectful. We followed all the rules. As a past member of the select board, I can recall times when quality proposals were submitted by people who I didn't like very much. And you know what I did? I voted for them because they were quality proposals. I also recall voting against proposals by people of color I consider close personal friends, that I consider close personal friends, because that's what integrity demands.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Our bridge proposal is all about working alongside the town to further racial justice, but this unwarranted scrutiny and these unnecessary delays undermine what should be a fruitful collaboration. They risk making a spectacle of this process, they risk the credibility of the board, and they put this town's commitment to racial justice further in question. There is no legitimate reason to hold up our proposal any further. Please do the right thing as the steward of these federal funds and commit to putting our proposal on the agenda for next Tuesday and publicly commit to voting for what is right. Full funding with no unnecessary contingencies. Make those commitments now so that, like every other approved applicant, we can get to work partnering with the town to move our community forward together. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Natalie Alinos. You can join us at the presentation station and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you so much. My name is Natalia Linos. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 6. I'm chair of the Advisory Council on Public Health, and also on the Bridge Board. I am the executive director of the FXB Center for Health and Human Rights, and I've come without prepared remarks because I was disappointed last week. I'm someone who entered Brookline politics during the COVID pandemic because I saw how much harm this was doing to us. ARPA funds are here to support us getting out, rebuilding from this horrid pandemic. I made a decision and a commitment to join a 501c3 because I believe that what Brookline needs is a very solid, explicit commitment to racial justice. And I know, for example, in the ACPH, we are a committee of excellent public health practitioners, but there's not a single person of color in that committee. I, as ACPH, would want to look to Bridge to support with some thinking around racial justice, for example. There is a need for this group. And I can say from my side, I haven't been involved in a lot of the actions of Bridge of the past. I am a new member. I was involved in 2021 when Bridge and the Housing Authority put together a COVID panel in order to make sure that all residents, including residents in public housing, had the latest information on COVID. And that was spectacular. And that's when I saw the power of this convening. So I urge you to question whether we really do have representation in our town government. And, I recognize I am a white woman here speaking, but I am a public health person who believes that ARPA funds should be going towards not only recovering from the public health crisis, but also our school crisis, our mental health crisis. And there are people on this board who are educators, who lead Indigenous rights, who want to do good and who are willing to put in the time. I do not think it is fair to not fully fund a proposal that is well thought out, that has been explicitly, rethought of as a 501c3 when there are people ready to serve. I am one of those people ready to serve. I hope you will give us that opportunity. Thank you.
At this time, there are 22 virtual attendees and 3 in person. No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, thank you. We don't have minutes this week, so we'll move on to the other miscellaneous items. Question of approving an authorization to hire in the finance department for a finance assistant. Question of accepting a rebate check from National Grid. Question of approving and executing a contract with Abe Faber, treasurer and co-director for the operation of the farmers market at Center Street West parking lot. Question of approving the Flowers and Opera community event to be held in the SS Pierce Alley on Saturday, May 20 from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And finally, question of approving a temporary all alcohol beverages sales license to Art Barn Community Theater for a fundraiser dinner on May 13. Any questions regarding those 5 miscellaneous items? No. I move approval of items 5A through 5E. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Next, police chief contract approval. We are going to put this off for another meeting. The negotiations are ongoing and very positive, but we have not reached agreement at this point. Primarily, I think, because this is vacation
School
week,
vacation week.
and police chief is out of the country, and our town administrator is also out of the state, and the contract will be probably quickly resolved once everyone comes back to Brookline. So we'll put that on the agenda for another meeting. Next, food vendor. Question of approving the application for a food vendor license for Josh Gellerman doing business as The Butchery at 374 Boylston Street.
I think number 8 is first. The Brookline Booksmith.
Okay, I apologize. I will stick to your written agenda instead of my computer. Secondhand articles license, Brookline Booksmith. Question of approving the application for a secondhand article license to Brookline Booksmith Corporation doing business as Brookline Booksmith at 279 Harvard Street in Brookline. As everyone probably knows, they also sell used books in the basement. So this is why this is up for license approval.
We do have Peter Wynn here from the Booksmith if you have any questions.
Okay.
Do we have any questions?
Well, I'm waiting for him to get up there.
He's here, but it's if you have questions.
Okay, do you have any questions?
No.
I was gonna ask him what books he sells.
Uh,
down
Where's-
there. Okay,
Yeah,
let's move
I have
on.
something to say.
Okay, yes, Miriam.
I just have to say, because the Brookline Booksmith is like my lifeblood. And so I just have to thank you for it. I'm literally only allowed to go once a week. My children have forbade me from going more than that because there's no room on my bookshelves for any new books. But thank you.
Thank you.
Just had to say it.
No, I echo that that sentiment. Okay, I move approval of the secondhand license articles license for Brookline Booksmith. All in favor, John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Next, the food vendor, the butchery license or application. Question of approving the application for a food vendor license for Josh Gellerman doing business as The Butchery at 374 Boylston Street. This is a location that they're going to prepare food at, baked as well as cooked food, and deliver it to the butchery on Harvard Street in refrigerated vans. I take it that they're not going to be preparing food at the Harvard Street location anymore, but maybe Mr. Gellerman can tell us.
Hi, Joshua. You've been promoted to a panelist if you'd like to unmute and talk a little bit about this license request.
Okay, if we're having trouble, I just want to give him an opportunity to talk about this project.
Yeah.
The butchery is a important institution in our community, and people ought to know about its expansion and development of this new facility.
We'll give him a couple of minutes, but I think you laid the groundwork well, Chair Green. A food vendor license is for any off-site entity that's delivering food within or serving food within the town of Brookline. So this is just an expansion of their kitchen that they already have at their location, and they're using this new space to make more food to bring over there. So this is very perfunctory. All of
Yeah.
the departmental reviews have gone through.
At any rate, Mike? you
I
have
would,
something?
I would be pleased to approve this. I mean,
Yeah,
this
of
is a
course.
very well-known organization and very, I think, appropriately respected. So,
Okay, I move approval of the application for a food vendor license for Josh Gellerman doing business as a butchery at 374 Boylston Street. All in favor? John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike?
aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. Anyone interested, they can look at our select board packet to get more information on this proposal or this project of this very important institution here in our town. Next, manager of record change, Mandarin Gourmet. Question of approving the application of a change of manager from Jamie Fang to Bao Peng Chen for DTJ Group, Inc., doing business as Mandarin Gourmet at Mandarin Gourmet. Question of approving the application for change of officer for DTG Group, Inc., doing business as Mandarin Gourmet at 1020 West Roxbury Parkway. And question of approving the application for change in owner interest for DTGJ Group, Inc., doing business as Mandarin Gourmet at 1020 West Roxbury Parkway. That is in Brookline?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yes.
I need to get out of Brookline
Well,
Village sometime.
exactly.
Okay. Any questions?
Since there has been much comment so far on a couple of local institutions that are well known in North Brookline and all over Brookline, and I'm talking about the butchery and the Brookline Booksmith. As someone who hails from more of the sort of southern part of town, I just want to say a word about Mandarin Gourmet because there are many from all over town, but especially from South Brookline and Chestnut Hill, who well recognize Mandarin Gourmet. It's one of the sort of staples of the Powderham Circle array of businesses, and beloved, I would have to say. And it's great to see that they're going to continue and that they're here for a routine renewal of, some routine changes in the restaurant, but the restaurant will remain.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna go visit them maybe this weekend.
You should.
And make sure that I get to know them well and the food that they serve.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? No. Okay. I see someone from Mandarin Gourmet is here. Anything you'd like to say? Okay.
Okay.
Hi. Okay. That's good to know. Okay. I move approval of the application for change of managers, as indicated in the agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, next, change of manager, alternate manager, Taco Bell. 4 questions here. Question of approving the application of a change of manager from Maria Lopez Ramos to Aaron Larson for Cantina Hospitality LLC, doing business as Taco Bell at 872 Comm Avenue. Question of approving the application of an alternate manager, Israel Vega for Cantina Hospitality, Taco Bell. Question of approving the application of a change of manager from Artur Ilascano Metza Jr. to Kayla Binger for Cantina Hospitality LLC, doing business as Taco Bell at 276 Harvard. Okay, they're two different stores here, one on Comm Avenue and one on Harvard Street. Question of approving the application of an alternate manager, Israel Vega for Cantina Hospitality LLC, doing business as Taco Bell at 276 Harvard Street. Any questions about this application? Okay. Okay, I move favorable, not favorable action. I move approval of the applications at both the 872 Comm Avenue and at the 276 Harvard Street locations. All in favor, please.
That's good.
I had a really good taco at the Harvard Street
Good flavor.
business just a few days ago.
Yeah.
Any rate, all in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, change of ownership, Dunkin' Donuts.
I haven't eaten yet tonight, and yet there's like nothing but food.
Okay.
All right,
Maybe
bring
we'll
it
take a
on.
break and run out and get a donut.
Bring it on.
Question of approving the application of a change of ownership for a common victualler from CDT Donuts doing business as Dunkin' Donuts to BB Donuts LLC doing business as Dunkin' at 265 Boylston Street. Don't need to go into hours of operation for this type of business, but question of approving the application of a change of ownership for a common victualler license from CDT Donuts doing business as Dunkin' Donuts to BB Donuts LLC doing business at Dunkin' at 1316 Beacon Street. Question of approving the application of a change of ownership for a common victualler from CDT Donuts doing business as Dunkin' Donuts to BB Donuts LLC doing business as Dunkin' at 8 Harvard Street. Any questions from the board on those changes of ownership of the 3 Dunkin' Donuts locations?
If-
I see
quick-
we have someone from the company here. Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark Page. My wife and I own a group of Dunkin' Donuts from Concord, Massachusetts, now into Boston, and we're excited to be in Brookline.
Well, welcome to Brookline.
Thank
Mind
you.
if I ask one question?
Sure, I'm sorry.
I hope this question doesn't catch you unawares, but if you add the information, I'd love to know, what does the BB stand for in
It's-
BB Donuts?
We try to, when we buy a group of stores, we just name them by the town. So it was Brookline and Boylston.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
Like
wanted to be sure that we're not about to witness some sort of a change away from Dunkin' to some other chain, but that's apparently
no,
not.
it's
so-
just, we always name it
MBTA is done.
by the town.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I move approval of the change of ownership for the 3 Dunkin' Donuts locations indicated. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Next, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, departmental budget reviews. Review of the fiscal year 24 department budgets for the Office of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Building Department. Let's start off with the budget for the Office of Veterans Affairs. Who do we have for that presentation?
Is Bill there?
So I'm gonna check and see where Bill is, but it looks like we have Commissioner Reese here if we want to take it out of
Oh, yeah.
Out of order? Sure.
order.
Sure.
So Commissioner Reese,
Hi, good evening.
good evening.
pull up my slides here. Everybody see that okay?
Tell us about your department.
Great. So as I said, I'm here presenting the budget, the proposed budget for FY24. Just a quick lineup for tonight. We'll go over the budget numbers, look at some accomplishments, some new initiatives, some goals that we're looking at moving forward, and then of course a really fun slide at the end. If we had no budget limitations, what would we think to do?
Commissioner, can I ask you to speak closer to your mic?
Sure.
For some reason I'm having difficulty hearing.
Is that a little better if I just speak up?
Yeah, a little better.
It's echoey. I'm not sure why, but
All right, I am soft spoken, so I'll try to speak up a little. So looking at our budget numbers, first I want to thank Charlie Young and Melissa. This is really my first time going through the whole budget process, so I appreciate their patience and help while I went through that. Overall, our budget was pretty flat from FY23 to the proposed 24. There looks like an apparent reduction in personnel, and that was actually a result of the special town meeting allocation from the first opioid settlement payments. When I actually remove that at the bottom, and you can see there's a slight increase of $3,000 in the overall budget. In addition to the town budget, there's two significant grants that are incorporated into our operations, and that's the more short-term local COVID tracing grant. And actually, we did get news that will be extended into FY24, so that's another $171,000 for Brookline. And then the new grant of the Public Health Excellence Grant, which is a total of 3 FTEs, 3 regional FTEs, I should say. And that's looking at about $300,000 per year, but that's more structured to be more long-term funded for 10 years. And we'll get into more detail as my slides go on here. But looking line by line, personnel, there's some increases and decreases in steps and longevity. Services and supplies are level. Utilities are seeing some increases just to reflect increase in expenses. And then capital reflects just our computer leases and some increases there. Overall, there is an increase in FTEs, but there's really movement in both directions. And the biggest out of the 3 regional positions I just described, part of the Public Health Excellence Grant. We actually removed an EPI position, which was never filled because it was funded by the depleting host community agreement funds. We swapped out a salary designated for the congregate care auditor for an existing admin role that was previously grant funded. And this admin role works a lot on complaint response, including rodent complaints, communications, and tobacco control. Lastly, there's 1.5 FTEs in the Substance Use and Violence Prevention Division that will hopefully shift over to the opioid stabilization funds as those funds accumulate in FY24. And right now that is carried in the budget with the host community agreement offset. So a lot of moving parts in our personnel. Again, I thank Charlie for his help on that. So you only allowed me to pick 3 accomplishments. So I tried to pick a variety of functions within the department. One thing overall we've really tried to do in my first year here with the budget narrative was move more towards measurable objectives and accomplishments. And you can sort of see some of the indicators here with these 3 accomplishments. Big accomplishment we'll hear it throughout the presentation and really some incentive for us to move forward is the Public Health Excellence Grant. And this is a state-funded grant looking to improve local public health infrastructure. It's a shared services regional project with Newton and Belmont. And like I said, it supports 3 FTEs to increase public health capacity. The state has conducted regional assessments and has set health department standards to meet as part of this funding. The metrics include workforce standards, capacity to meet regulatory responsibilities and core public health services, as well as our ability to respond to public health emergencies in our community. Second, I wanted to highlight the work of our substance use and violence prevention team. Each year, the division works with our peer youth leaders to implement prevention strategies. Youth engage with their peers and younger students to have honest and effective conversations around substance use, gender violence, and mental health. And you can see here, the peer leaders conducted 54 health classes and reached over 1,000 students. And lastly, I wanted to highlight the work of our public health nursing and EPI division, as well as emergency preparedness, those 2 teaming up to help us distribute the COVID test kits. We continue to respond to COVID, and I really want to thank the amazing efforts of the team in distributing those kits in the community. In addition, I want to thank our community partners, both internal and external, such as the Senior Center and the library, the schools, the food pantry, and BHA, and many more who continue to help us distribute these test kits in the community. And we'll continue to track that as we continue to distribute them, because they are a great effective strategy. Some more initiatives going forward. Now, all of these are interrelated and they kind of play into each other, but I wanted to highlight these 3 programs that we are working on. The first, I'm really excited to start our 2-year project on the community health assessment and the community health improvement plan. I'm very thankful to get ARPA funding for this. It's really going to provide the department with a strategic plan to provide direction and focus on our efforts moving forward. We have planned to approach it to be proactive in our public health efforts and move away from having more of a reactionary stance, where we're really moving in many different directions. So having clear identified goals with measurable objectives will be part of phase 2 with the health improvement plan. We'll also be developing an evaluation tool to measure the effectiveness at addressing the concerns that were outlined in the assessment. And I'm hoping to include this board in the process with some invitations to join the steering committees in this 2-year community health assessment and improvement plan. And you can see in the icon here, these are sort of the steps that we involved when conducting the assessment and the planning. But in the short term, another project we're really looking at and hopefully we'll be able to implement soon is mapping out our human services. After 1 year and a couple months now in my position, I'm constantly learning about new programs for residents, and the network of services is vast and constantly changing. I think we need to identify and create a system to facilitate and collaborate across public and private efforts. And then my third initiative I want to highlight was our goal to rebuild our community substance use prevention coalition. And again, this is really tied into a lot of the work that I think will come out of the assessment and the improvement plan. It works to engage with stakeholders around substance use prevention, and we'll also be incorporating the opioid settlement funds as those start to roll in, and how we plan and engage with the community around that spending. So some goals looking forward, I hope to really work on additional grant seeking. I think that's a great opportunity for us to bring in new programs. And I think that is, all of these goals are again tied together because we need better data gathering and data sharing to both allow us to have more measurable objectives and evaluation, but also a lot of that data will lead into future grant opportunities. We have some great resources with the Acela system, which is what we use for licensing and permitting as well as inspections. There's a vast amount of data that I think we just need to tap into, but also some new things. We were able again to use some ARPA funding to make some software purchases, one of which, Qualtrics, which will allow us to not only better gather data, but get some of those dashboards up that I know we've discussed in the past, and I'm very interested to be able to share the data with the public in a consumable way. And like I said, it also allow us to measure our effectiveness once we start to track it with data. And that all really plays into the continued growth that the Public Health Excellence Grant will allow us to do on many of these new initiatives. I don't know where my last slide is, because that's the fun slide that I promised you, but I will just talk to it because it just outlines a few things. So if there were no budget limitations, I think a lot of our work, obviously, in municipal government is done by personnel. So thinking about how would we increase our human services arm of the division. But I would still really want to know where the gaps exist. So talking about that human services gapping study to really identify what type of human services and what type of position we might need. Whether it be social workers, community health workers, ambassadors, navigators. I don't think I clearly have a grasp on that at this point. So hoping that we could do a mapping study to better identify where the needs are. Within that human services umbrella, I would also think I would love to build up our substance use and violence prevention division, that there's a great opportunity there to really engage in a positive way about some of the successes in Brookline and some of the prevention strategies we could use. In addition to that, I think building up our EPI capacity, again, going back to the many initiatives and goals that I have talked about and how important data is, it would give us better capacity to capture data, but also communicate data to the public. And I think there's some amazing health indicators about Brookline. I think I'd like to share that a little more. We actually have a very healthy community. But I think when we get down to the data and looking at the indicators, it will also allow us to identify where those disparities are and where we need to continue to work. And then lastly, on the amazing wish list, if there were no constraints, thinking about a grant writer or coordinator, because that is a key aspect of a lot of the work that we do, looking for additional grants to fund all these initiatives and great ideas. And with that, I welcome any questions.
Hey, Mike?
With regard to the $300,000 grant, and that's a 10-year grant. Is that what we're hearing? So it's $30,000 per year. Is that the way the state provides the funds?
Yes, so it's $30,000 per year for regional services. So looking across those three communities, mainly the intent of that is to fund FTEs, is to fund staff to allow us to increase our capacity. We have started to have discussions because the state is now looking at the statewide capacity, and it sounds like that 300,000 might be a base, that it might be opportunity to increase that. This is for really the first time the state legislature had budgeted state funds, not federal pass-through funds, to support local public health. So we're excited about this endeavor.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Hi, Sigal. Thank you so much for the presentation. The audio was a little echoey, so if I missed something, please, just say so. I'm looking for, if you would just give us a couple of minutes of update on the rodent eradication program. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, we continue to implement the rodent action plan, working very closely with the building department and with Public Works. We have instituted the modern system throughout the town. There are 45 boxes and 5 pipe systems. We started sharing that data on our website where you can see the month-to-month modern catches. In addition to that, we have implemented the food safety consultant that actually is out for 2 months now, started in March, actually out in the field and really evaluating neighborhoods and identifying any contributing factors, and then addressing them, mainly focused with our food establishments. I know that Public Works has begun the procurement process on the additional big bellies that were also part of the rodent action plan. We have done community awareness on our website, really tried to improve the information on there, and as well as gotten our door hangers printed, actually, I think just the other week. And so those will be going out to communities. So I think we're in a much better place than we were spring last year. A lot more tools out there. We are constantly looking at other strategies we could use. And I know we've had some dialogue with ContraPest, which is the rodent birth control system, to see if that would work in our community too.
If you don't mind, just another question or two. Is there any way of saying, can we report that the problem is now, a degree less than it was as a result of these efforts, or not? Have we seen any evidence that we can point to that we're making progress, or maybe not making progress and need to do more?
I think that's a really hard question to answer. And, I just did a whole presentation about how data and evaluation is so important. And that's what makes this situation really difficult. We have no baseline data of what is the rodent population in Brookline. We really rely on our complaint data. And I think while that trends in the same direction, that it's not a great indicator of the activity in town. It's really at the junction of where humans are interacting and where the rodents are, and that's where we get the complaints. And I think a great example of that is we had I think almost about a third of our catches are actually down in the Cypress Street area. But that's not where we get a lot of complaints. And we were able to investigate and actually determined some contributing factors in the area and took enforcement action against those establishments to improve the area. So I think that's another good data indicator is the modern pest boxes along with complaint data. At least this gives us additional things to look at. But I think we're in a better place in that we have more tools. I think we'll see as the season kicks up if our complaints go down. But it's really hard to measure our progress on that. And that's not obviously unique to
Have the complaints yet gone down, or are they pretty much staying at the same level at this point?
They've seasonally gone down. I think the real measure will be in the next couple of months as the warmer temperatures come and we tend to see more complaints and more activity.
Yeah. And a word about mice, maybe. I'm trying to figure out if the rat problem is being replaced by a mouse problem. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about mice all of a sudden.
Mice are an easier
I have
challenge
a question.
Than rats, but still a challenge. I haven't seen, I can check with my staff on that, but I don't think we've gotten an increase in mice complaints.
Okay, thanks.
I think I heard Miriam say that she had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I have a few. Thanks, Sigal. You know, I love data. I love data. I have a couple of questions and they kind of overlap a little bit, which is, I saw the heavy focus on substance abuse, domestic violence, which of course, you know, I'm a public health person myself, always glad to see that. But for me, it makes me take a step back and think, you know, we need to really focus on mental health support because that's what leads to substance abuse and domestic violence more often than not. So I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about that in terms of the budget and also, and this is a two-part question, then how is the Department of Public Health and Human Services playing with, you know, how are you working with groups like BCF, who I think they're also doing a health assessment, with the Brookline Mental Health, who's really doing a lot of frontline mental health work for Brookline. So if you could talk to that, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for the great presentation.
Sure. Yeah, I think, and that's where I think a lot of those goals and initiatives sort of tie in together. With our mental health services, they are somewhat limited. We do contribute to the Brookline Center for Community Mental Health. That's a large portion of our mental health budget. And we do have a social worker in the schools as part of the substance use and violence prevention team. I'm very excited because I think as part of the community health assessment, some of that information will come out and then we'll be able to really identify in the improvement plan where we can make impact. I think mental health is something that the department does not do that much and could do a whole lot more, and also could be a collaborator and convener of a lot of, like you talked about with the Brookline Center for Mental Health, but also the Community Foundation. I've been in touch with both of them on the Human Services Mapping Project to get some input on them to make sure that we're asking the right questions and setting the right goals for that request for the RFP that I hopefully will be issuing soon, to make sure that we are looking in the right direction and, like I said, asking the right questions. So collaborating with them a lot. But I hear you on the mental health thing. And I think the last part was, and so in regards to the budget, there's about 180,000 to the Brookline Center for Mental Health, and I believe that's been level funded this year.
Mike?
Yeah, I wonder if we could get back to the rodents for a moment. So two questions. If you're seeing more trapped rats, I don't know other way to put it, picked up by the modern, is it modern?
The smart boxes.
The smart boxes, right? I'm thinking of the company name. By the smart boxes, if you're seeing more of them, are you reallocating where you have the boxes placed? Do you you're shifting back to, down to Cypress Street, for example, in order to see whether you can get that situation under better control? That's one thing. And then how well do these things seem to work? Any sense of that? We had a lot of discussion. You remember we had some controversy around the use of this particular device. So I'm curious as to how well you feel like they're, are they as good as we expected them to be in terms of actually trapping rodents?
So I think those questions go together because I think they've been more effective in some locations than others. And I've continually asked the service provider, Modern Pest, to help us evaluate that. So some have received many hits and we can say dispatches, and some have seen very little activity. So that makes me question, are we putting them in the right areas? Are we hitting the high activity areas in the right way? I think particularly over the winter months, when we first put them out, they were very active, and then some locations definitely slowed down. So we will be reevaluating those locations really on a constant basis. And I would say, in addition to the boxes, there are 5 pipe systems, which are in our sewer systems. which ideally should be a closed system, right? But we know that, it's not perfect and there are openings to that. And we've actually seen a lot of success with the pipe systems, which again goes to my difficulty evaluating this. I think there's a lot of activity underground that we don't see. And so I've had conversations, and really the consultant has advised us to maybe wait a little longer, because I'm wondering, the pipes are more expensive, but wondering if we should take some of those boxes that are not having a lot of activity and maybe putting in more pipe systems, because those seem more effective. But I think we want to see, as we again get into the warmer months, if the activity increases, and then evaluate that as we go on. And then they are checked on a regular basis, several times a month. Systems are checked to make sure they're operating properly. And this, of course, is by the consultant.
Okay. And the reliability of the traps have been acceptable? You're
Yeah,
checking
but I
on
think
them,
some better
they're
than
working
others.
properly?
Yeah. Yes, I do think they are working properly, but some are definitely better than others, and that might be a factor of location and where it's set and activity level.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm thinking about the mechanical functioning of the device itself. That they're, it's sort of like an automobile, how many times you have to take it to the dealer to have something fixed?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't had any feedback. Now the contractors out there, the one servicing them, but I haven't heard that things aren't operating. It's more that they're just not getting hits.
Lack of business, as it were. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I have a question, actually. You mentioned that Brookline is a very healthy community, but when you dig down into the details, you see some gaps. And it looks like there's some gaps in services to youth beyond health and substance use type of problems. Could you talk about this information and referral position that, as I understand it, and I may have misheard your presentation, but as I understand it, is designed to address some of the social services that are needed in town, particularly as they relate to youth?
So I think what I'm hoping to do is map out what existing services are out there, both within the town and in the private nonprofit sectors. I don't know what type of position we need at this point. And that's what I'm hoping the mapping study will help us address. I think also there's some opportunity for convening and working with existing services such as the teen center, right? And helping them grow as a resource for youth. I think across all ages, there's a vast network, really a patchwork of services, which is, again, not unique to Brookline. Human services are delivered by a patchwork, and that's part of the problem with different funding sources and different public and private entities providing the services. So what I want to do is understand that landscape and then identify what type of role the town can have, whether it be working with BCF or working with some other nonprofit or providing staffing ourselves.
Great. Any other questions from the board? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigal.
Okay, next is the Veteran Services. Ready?
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can, Bill.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Bill.
Having a little minor technical difficulty, but we got it worked out.
Okay, tell us about your program, your budget, and what you expect to do going forward.
Understanding some of the challenges that are facing the town right now, we're requesting level funding. The advisory committee wanted to throw some extra money at us, which is appreciated, but I can survive with what I agreed to. I'm still looking at getting a vehicle, but I'm really trying to get a green vehicle, and that's a little more challenging. So that's why I haven't purchased a vehicle yet. Our biggest challenges right now is there's been a lot of changes in veterans law with benefits, the PACT Act. So we're having a lot of people applying for disability benefits based on their experiences, especially at Camp Lejeune, and it has expanded dioxin on Vietnam era veterans also. So there's a number of things going on. So we've been really busy lately. If we have to take a $25,000 cut, we can do that. The advisory committee wanted to ask me if, what I'd like if I could give anything. And I said the internship program would be nice, and it still would be. I understand the financial constraints again, but it was a good program and it helped the town as well as it helped my veterans. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, anything
Basically what
else?
I'm going with right now.
Okay, great. Mike,
I want to make sure that we say what the circumstance would be if the override passes, that you'd get. And there are a number of departments that have been cut in some way that, but funding would come back if the override passes.
I understand that. And,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
I've
sure
worked
you
with-
understand it. Yeah, I want to make sure the public understands it.
Okay, I've worked, so the public understands, I've worked with Melissa and the town administration before. The benefits that we give out are kind of like trying to predict a snow for the DPW. They're depending on a lot of economic circumstances, we can have more or less people qualifying, applying for benefits. We've been turning back money the last couple of years, but I can't guarantee that'll happen this year. And we react to that. If we run short of money, which has happened before, we would have to go to get a supplemental budget from you guys. And we've done that before too, not recently, but we've had to do that before.
Right. I think it's also, I think, appropriate to say that I think you have the smallest departmental budget of any department in the town, and you do an incredible amount with that money.
We also understand that every little bit helps, and we're trying to do our part.
Okay, thank you.
and your department also plays a small but very significant and important role in providing what we're calling these days social services to veterans. I think a lot of your programs, or some of your programs, can be models for other programs around the town. So
We are very, very appreciative of our veterans. And yes, we do provide social services. I'm not a clinician. I like to consider myself a facilitator, and I work to get my veterans into a treatment if they need it, and to make sure they're getting the full benefits they need, and basically just do, I don't have as many people coming in from the services I used to, but even now there's still adjustment issues we work with.
yeah, what I really meant was that providing access and guidance for veterans is an important thing that I think that we ought to do more generally in town. So
Thank you.
Mike,
Oh,
Sit.
it's great.
John, anything?
No, nothing more. Thanks, Bill.
Miriam, I can't see your hand if it's up.
Just thank you, Bill, for always doing such a great job.
Miriam, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Chaz, you have something to say?
I just said thank you.
Oh,
Just thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Bill. Okay. Let's move on to the building department.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you
evening.
for having me here today. I'm going to have Devin share my screen. There we go. So the building department, you can go to the next screen, Devin. I just wanted to highlight some of the achievements that, the three divisions, were able to get done over the last year. Public Buildings Division was able to process over 11,000 in-house work orders. Contractor service orders were in the area of 1,700. Those are outside contractors that do some PM work for us, fire alarm systems, elevator inspections, and so forth. The Code Enforcement Inspection Division, reviewed and issued over 6,900 permits. and they performed just over 10,000 inspections. And in the capital improvement and construction division, we've done in the area of $600 million worth of work over the last 5 years. And that's totals about 542,000, square feet of area. And if the Pierce School were to pass, that would add probably an additional 200 million and another 160,000, square feet. Thank you, Devin. Next slide. Some of the accomplishments that we've had over the last year were we were able to work with the town and school officials to fully fund the repair and maintenance budget especially on the school side. That does include the Driscoll, which will be coming online in a year or so. It does not include the Pierce School. That's too far out for some of the predictions that we've made. We've got a capital improvements plan, which we continue to work on and make progress on, even though we're very short-staffed. 2 out of the 3 positions there are unfilled. And Tony, who heads up that division, is looking to retire, but he has agreed to stay on while we continue to do the search. But we've able to, continue with the high school expansion project with respect to the 3rd floor renovation. The quad was done over. We were able to bid and secure contracts for Tappan Street. We completed the Pierce School design, and we got MSBA approval. And one of the other highlights of this year, we're able to, work with the USGA, the Country Club, other town officials and departments for a very successful US Open. Next slide, Devin. The goals for the coming year are to work on a reconfiguration, a reorganization of the department to try to fill that gap with our staffing issues. We continue to have 3 empty HVAC technician positions. I've got 1 building official position open, and we're looking to reorganize the department and essentially consolidate the public buildings division and the public buildings division and create 2 deputy division heads, one that would take up CIP, one that would take up operations. This is not the first time. We're modeling this after Wellesley and Weston. We have had conversations with Chaz and Melissa and Charlie and HR, and they all seem, supportive. Another goal would be, just general enforcement. And this is just all around with respect to zoning, general bylaws, complaints, and then just the implementation again of the CIP. Continue with that, considering the fact that we do have, minimum staffing. We do have an outside agency helping us recruit. They're having difficulty as well. So this has kind of been an all hands on deck thing for us. The proposal came through Charlie Simmons. The building commission's been involved. They've had conversations with the 6th floor. So we are all working hard to make sure that we can, continue on, keep the CIP going, and keep up with the, the workload. With that said, the Pierce School, the vote will come in May, and we'll see how easy or how difficult, that might be going forward. But we're ready and we're prepared, and we'll, do what we have to do, to follow up on those goals. Next slide, please. We are, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we're trying to do the reorganization of the department. I think that would go a long way in helping us try to fill these positions. It would allow some flexibility on that end. Typically, Tony and Ray, who were the construction division side, and Charlie always worked very closely together on all these projects. So it, seemed appropriate to put them under that one division head. And again, it's modeled, after a Weston and a Wellesley model, which both Charlie Young and Charlie Simmons are familiar with. It's not creating anything new. It's just following, the guidelines and the setup. And we are working with Chaz and HR on, salaries, job descriptions, and this will be implemented, over time we're hopeful that, the override, passes, which will allow the funding to, get this thing going. In addition, I am looking to roll out, an enforcement for short-term rental registration. We continue to get, some complaints. We follow up on those as they come in, and we work, hard to try to get registration, but they're very low. And I do have the DOR's list of registered short-term rentals, and we're working to separate those out. One kind of like easy enforcement, one the more difficult enforcement, and we're working on that, as best we can while doing all of other functions. The reorganization will include a new position, and that would be, a one building inspector dedicated to zoning enforcement, and it would be not just zoning, it would be zoning, it would be bylaws, it would be complaints, a little bit of everything as they come in, and we'll try to be a little more proactive than reactive, as we are now. Next slide, Devin. If we weren't constrained by any, budgetary limitations, we would continue to do, sustainable buildings and infrastructure. As you know, I think you guys voted on Tuesday to approve essentially electrification of the health building and the senior center. In addition, we're going to couple that with some work that we have to do on the HVAC system at the library. So, those will be, being done over the next year. In addition to that, I continue to try to get monies and funding for document scanning. If we had an unfunded or unlimited budget, we would perform a detailed report on all building systems throughout the town, probably upgrade some of the Excel infrastructure. And the last bullet there is what I had just said with respect to create a zoning enforcement position and other issues for the code enforcement and of the building department. And lastly, I just have a couple of slides that I wanted to go through to show you pictures of some of the projects that we're working on and that have been done. This is a picture of the Driscoll School. As you all know, this is coming along. Expected opening date is October. The next slide is the STEM wing and 22 Tappan. Those projects were completed on time. It was a very complicated project going over the MBTA, and we continue to work on other phases of that project through the capital and CIP process. The next page shows some construction that is ongoing. This is mostly CHR. You have the Asheville building on the left-hand side, 101 Asheville, that has 175 units in it. On the right-hand side is a pudding stone comp permit. That's got about 250 units in it. And that project is moving from the south side to the north side, which is the ROSB is south, which includes 101 Asheville and 11 infill buildings. And we're moving north to the pudding stone side, where we're, working on that, 250 unit building. The next slide shows a couple of, larger single family homes that are under construction, here in town. These are both on Warrant Street, and this is just a typical or two typical, large renovation projects that happen at any given time here in Brookline. Some of the completed projects on the next page. On the left-hand side is a multifamily building that was finished on Auburn Street. On the right-hand side is a multifamily building on Boylston Street. There are 5 units on the right-hand side, and there were 12 units on the left-hand side. Under construction is 45 units on the left-hand side. That's a Babcock Street comprehensive permit. That project has been stalled. The first contractor, they released, and they got a new contractor in there. The same contractor finished Auburn Street first, and then they're going to be moving to the Babcock Street one. On the right-hand side, it's a single family in the front and a 2-family in the back. And that was a bit of a complicated project. It required a modification to special permit issued some time ago that lot couldn't be built on. The zoning board allowed it to be built. The Historic Commission, Preservation Commission was very involved in the design and how those look. And then lastly, on the second last is the Coolidge Corner, project that's coming along. The picture on the right was probably about 6 months ago. Picture on the left was within the last 2 to 3 weeks. And lastly is 20 Boylston Street, which is a 14 unit. The next page, Devin, is 20 Boylston Street, and it has about 14 units. Some are affordable, and on the first floor is retail. And most of the multifamilies that I showed you do have parking garages below, and incorporate a number of affordable units, working towards or maintaining our 10% cap. So that's it. And if you have any questions, I'm here, and I think I have Charlie Simmons here. Are there any other specific questions on the public building side?
John.
And I have a question.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much. And I must say, I think it's hard to keep up with how much work the building department has to oversee in Brookline, and that review is really, really enlightening. And of course, looking ahead, I do hope sometime soon we're going to start seeing construction on the Waldo Durgan project. So there's another one, many, many, many units of housing, high-rise hotel in Coolidge Corner. I take note of what you said at the beginning about staffing. And I just do have a question about, could you give people a sense of what kind of staffing is required to properly oversee something as complex as the proposed Pierce project? And do you have that staffing right now? And if not, what do we do?
So I'm going to say probably Charlie might be able to give me a better date. But maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I think it was shortly after the Ridley School was completed. That was the last project that the town used in-house OPM, Owner's Project, or OPI, Owner's Project Management. And Tony and Ray were both certified, in that field, so they could, do it in-house. It was cheaper. It was certainly more stressful on them, but it was something that it was just the way Brookline, did things. But we foresaw the line of capital projects coming on the school side, both the building commission, town staff, and even the sixth floor, with Mel and Melissa. And we opted to transition from in-house OPM to outside OPM. And that started with the high school project. So I think with that model, it allowed us to proceed, with the staff that we had, which was Tony Quigley as project administrator, Ray Masak as project manager, and then we had a on-site, rep. Ray Masak retired a year ago, and we've been trying to, work hard to fill his, position. And Russ Hugazian, he retired maybe 8 months ago. So those actually might be closer to a year and a half and maybe a year, first and second there. But so that's the staffing that we have had normally. We have been able to, transition a little bit with Charlie and some of his staff to help ease some of that pain in taking on, some of the smaller capital projects. If the Pierce School, does pass, we'll have to step back and take a look and see what we will have to do on our side. But we're hopeful that with the reorganization, we'll be able to get those positions, filled. In addition to, some assistance from our OPM, our outside OPM. We're confident that we can, continue on in the way that we have been, but it could be a little tough at the beginning. But if we can get those positions filled, I think, it'll make it, that much easier. We do have some provisions for an outside, consultant if need be. The cost there is quite substantial. It's in the $1,500 a day if we go with an outside, component there. But staffing has been an issue, but we know it's not just us. It's kind of all around. So, with that said, we'll continue to work with the 6th floor HR, building commission, and internal staff to make sure we, do our best to fill the positions and then, work on the CIP.
And just to complete the picture, you mentioned Tony Quigley, and he is not going to be in position to supervise this project. Is that correct?
Based on conversations I've had with them, at best, we might get him through the end of Driscoll. I'm not sure if we will have, I can convince him to stick around for Pierce. I'd love to. He is, the best at what he does. And I think, you could ask people around town that while he can be a little harsh and, push the projects along, he is the person, people say, who we looking for this position, and we're looking for, another Tony. But hopefully with, Charlie's help, myself, town administrator and others, we can, get the reorganization done and get those positions filled.
Thank you.
I think Miriam had her hand up.
I do. Thank you. Thank you, Dan and Charlie. I need to give a particular shout out to Tony because I work with him on Driscoll, and I'm very appreciative that he's agreed to stay on. And my question, and I need to give a shout out to the override because, of course, passing the override means we can pay competitive salaries. Hint, hint, public. We want to fill these positions. This is the way to do it. And then my question for you is, do we pass some really cutting edge, comprehensive building? I'm absolutely blanking on the word. Sustainable building things. What is the word?
Code.
Building code.
Thank you. Then how do you see that playing into your department in the next year?
I did have that noted on my, my slides up handwritten. I did not mention them, during this, but it is something that my department is, dealing with. And it's kind of it's a give and take. So we're educating the public. We've done some outreach on our own to DOER, to the BBRS. We've had meetings with HERS raters in town, which we've never done before, to try to, talk on both sides here. Is how you guys think you're going to comply. They're asking, what are we going to do to make them comply? There are a lot more, there's a lot more documentation and paperwork needed at the beginning, and a lot more documentation and paperwork needed at the end. And we're only in one new code since January 1st. On July 1st, it kicks in, the commercial stretch energy code. It kicks in our specialized code. And then at town meeting, they're voting to adopt the model code, which should be in effect in January, and as early as January, I think no later than March, in that time frame. On top of all that, we've got a building code 10th edition that's coming out that I think at this point, based on some conversations I've had and emails I've read, probably isn't going to happen until after July. There was some initial conversations that maybe July, but I think it's going to happen after that. We're talking about a concurrency period, which wasn't there. So they're thinking about 6 months, which, 4, 5, 6 years ago, every code that was adopted always had a concurrency period. For whatever reason, that kind of stopped. All of the energy codes are just in effect on a certain day. And our last change on some of the building codes, there was no concurrency. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. Not so much for us. We have to learn the code anyways, but if there's someone's been working on a design for 1.5 years or a year, and they can't get it in before that deadline, the application, they have to then redesign a good part of their building, to comply with these, these other codes. But, we're learning on our end. We're taking the courses. We're doing everything we can to, understand what they meant to say, what they did say, how they've said it. We're working on the preservation because there's some issues now with historic buildings and how we, look at those. So we're exploring all avenues and, staff, we meet internally, my 4 building inspectors, Deputy Commissioner Paul Campbell and myself weekly, just to review, what we're seeing, what we're doing, how we're doing it. And we're reaching out to colleagues to make sure we're kind of all on the same page, because that hasn't really happened on the inspector side yet. So.
Thank you.
So first of all, I want to say that the report that you've given and Segal's and Bill's, Bill, were the perfect mix, as far as I'm concerned, of brevity, data, and narrative. And I appreciate the fact that you boiled down a pretty complex operation to what you did present to us. I have a question about the outside project manager, about left field.
Yeah.
Being the name of the outside project manager. When we were on this board, we were concerned about the initial budget for Pierce and raised some questions when that budget landed. We got some pushback from, of all places, left field, their representatives, and I wonder how you feel that organization has performed as outside project manager. Would you consider them for the next round? And, who else is there, basically?
So, that's really more of a Tony question, because he gets into the day-to-day with them. But on an overall, they're doing what we asked them to do.
Okay, good.
With respect to the Pierce School, my understanding is they have submitted a number. And Tony is working with staff, the building commission, and others to try to trim that down, if you will. I don't know if Charlie has any more, insight, but they, we did contact left field because they're doing the Driscoll and want to ask them questions about if the position was vacant, for an outside vendor, an outside contractor, what roughly those, numbers would be. And that's where we came up with roughly the $1,500 a day if we were unable to, keep Tony on. The other, there are many out there. The high school, I think, was Hill International. I don't have a broad span of who is out there and what they do. I'm not sure if Charlie has any, more to add, to that specific line of questioning, but I could certainly get back to you and give you a.
Right, maybe that's perhaps better. But I mean, the main point is that I would hope that we'll take careful look at what they've done. If they've done a great job, that's wonderful. And on the other hand, if there are alternatives, it's certainly worth taking a look.
I agree.
Yeah, John.
Dan, thank you for answering all these questions. I had one more question, kind of related. Is there a budget for the work that's going to have to be done to Newbury to get it ready to take the Pierce kids during the period of Pierce construction? And, do we have a number for that budget and just a quick description of the scope of the work?
I don't have a specific scope of what's happening at Newbury. I do believe there are two budget line items. I don't remember the amounts, but I think that they're pretty substantial. One, I think addresses like transportation. So how are we going to get the kids that would be going to Pierce to Newbury? Because sometimes in these instances, you've got to now add a whole busing program that typically isn't in the school budget. And then there is another line item, I believe, that talks about, bringing Newbury into some sort of, what I like to call the Brookline, way is, what upgrades, what things need to be done there, understanding fully that it's just a temporary location. My understanding is they're going to split the grades between Newbury and the old Lincoln School. I don't know if Charlie has any specifics on that. I think they were kind of dancing between whether the younger kids were going to be at Newbury, the older kids at Lincoln, or older kids at Newbury and younger at Lincoln. I'm not sure if that decision has been made, but I would expect after the vote, we would start nailing down each of those things and providing or creating some sort of a scope. And Charlie typically works very closely with the school department on what those needs would be, what we could do, what we can't do, what the cost would roughly be. And we were relatively successful, with the devotion school when we split them into two and had them at two, separate locations. So however, this plays out, if Pierce was to pass at the polls, I believe there are, budgeted funds, whether it's enough for what one member might think versus another member, that remains to be seen.
Thanks.
Okay, Miriam, do you have any questions?
I just chime in real briefly here.
Chaz does, but I don't.
Okay, Chaz?
I just wanted to chime in and say, I think Dan has been, he's done a great job at this, but might be a little modest. The members of the building commission have spoken to me and others and, talked about the scope of the work that the building department has really done over the last 10 years in terms of capital projects alone. Brookline has undertaken almost $500 million in capital improvements over the last 10 years, successfully, largely on time and on budget. And I think that's a real tribute to Dan, Charlie, Tony, Russ, and Ray, and Sarah and the entire team at the building department from top to bottom to make that happen. And I think that this proactive plan that Dan and Charlie have been spearheading to reorganize the department and ensure redundancy as some of these, big names now move towards retirement or the next thing. And an environment where, as Dan has often said, people are not in these jobs for 30, 40 years, the way some people are. It's a different sort of economy and a different sort of environment. How do we ensure that there's institutional memory and institutional awareness to make sure that, someone at the skill level of Tony comes in and is able to then develop that institutional knowledge that Tony has to make sure that the work continues unabated, regardless of who is in that chair. That's really the aim of this work. And I think it's really important to emphasize what a great job the department has done, the importance of those internal positions, those internal project management and oversight positions, not just in terms of how much money they save, but in terms of the benefit of knowing, as Dan put it in a different context, the Brookline way, knowing how things are meant to be done, knowing who needs to be called. All of those things are difficult to achieve with outside project management at that high of a level. So while it's certainly important to use consultants for where they're necessary, I think Brookline does a really good job of ensuring that there is in-house expertise in project and program management. And it's a real tribute to the community and how well it's been run. So when I came into this job, 6-7 months ago and saw that, I knew that we were already in good hands. And I'm really grateful to Dan and Charlie for their work, thinking through how to make the department, how to lead the department into the future.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're ahead of schedule.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, way ahead of
How
schedule.
could we be?
Yeah, and I'm gonna take on that note, I am going to take my leave. So I will not be back for the warrant article reviews and votes, whatever comes next.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your
Enjoy.
evening.
Yep. Can we take a short break?
We have 35 minutes to waste.
Oh, my goodness.
You can take,
We're not
Why
going
don't
to
we-
take
why
that
don't we-
long a break, are we?
Yeah, no.
you can
Are
take
there
some things out of
reminders?
order.
Yeah, let's take some things out of order.
Yeah, I like that.
Wait,
do you wanna
I
take a
might
break
stay
first?
for a few more minutes. Oh, wait, okay. I was about to say, if you take a few things at the end out of order, I can stay for those, but I won't stay for the,
Naming committee, the 2 warrant articles that you need to vote on, and then MBTA committee.
We can do that.
Do you want to do that first or you want to
Sure.
take a break first?
But not the presenters who are here for the,
So because we've noticed,
because that's a hearing. Okay.
7:45, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start off with the naming committee. The last item on the agenda, and let's get that out of the way. We have a candidate whose name is.
you have 3 candidates for 2 open spots,
Right.
and you also have the opportunity to appoint an alternate.
Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Ooh, okay.
yeah, can I say something?
Yes, Miriam.
Since I know that you guys I shouldn't say I know. My suspicion is that you don't support Kevin for a position. I would like to propose that we at least put him on as the alternate.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
That was easy.
Why do we not?
I mean,
Anyway,
I
She's trying to-
said I
She's
don't,
trying to
I'm
make
just,
this easy, but
I'm
Okay.
trying to, based
Accepted.
on the conversations I've had with you and based on the interview of Kevin, I'm making the assumption. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just putting it out there.
Okay.
well, do you want to take nominations or how should we do this?
Yeah, well, how should we do this?
I mean, I'm happy to make two nominations and the third.
Go ahead.
Okay, why don't you go do that?
Well, then I would like to nominate Pam Roberts and Harry Friedman for the two vacant positions and Kevin McKenzie for the alternate position. And thank you, Miriam.
I'll second that. Okay.
Okay.
Unless there's any discussion, I'll move approval of the slate that John just mentioned. All in favor, indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay. Do you want to do the MBTA?
I would say the Warrant articles maybe,
Okay.
because I
Mm,
think there will be
Yeah,
some
I-
folks. who are
Yeah, MBTA is
interested
big.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, then you can take we do the warrant article votes, then I'll leave, then you can take your break,
and
do
then-
MBTA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's 10 and 19.
Yeah, let me get on my computer.
Yeah. 10.
Okay, first of all, we had the hearing on warrant article 10 to define and require lead petitioners for warrant articles. I understand that a word change that was suggested with respect to, I think it was citizens versus residents.
Yeah.
Was rejected by the moderator as out of scope, so we'll just have to deal with that at a future date. But I move favorable action on Article 10. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye, unless there's any discussion.
No.
No discussion here.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
No.
no, Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Next, Article 19, amend the general bylaws to create a Black and Brown Commission. Let me just say that at last Tuesday's meeting of the Select Board, we took up warrant Article 19 in a public hearing. The proponent spoke, and the first speaker, Ms. Sana Hafez, began by asking, and I quote, "The obvious question here today is, why do we need this?" Close quote. The Select Board expected to have that question answered at the hearing with a persuasive argument that warrant Article 19 is what is needed. The proponents of warrant Article 19, however, failed to persuade me. So I move no action on warrant Article 19. All in favor of no action, please indicate by saying aye. John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. So the recommendation of the Select Board to town meeting is no action on warrant Article 19. Okay, what should we do next? You want to do MBTA?
If you want to take a brief break and
Okay.
then go to MBTA communities.
Okay, why don't we do that?
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you,
Now I'm
Miriam.
leaving. Bye.
Bye. Okay.
All right. Let's take 5.
Let's see, 5 minutes?
7:18.
If we go, we do have to get Dick Benka online here. So
He is in the audience. He's in the room.
Anyone else? I mean, I thought the others too. I don't know. Maybe.
Do we, that's
Yes, for 7:40.
that's notice for 7:45.
well, it'll be closer to 7:30 than 7:45. So no sweat.
Well, if it's notice for 7:45, we have to.
Yeah.
That's. when we
Yeah,
have to do
that's
it.
the problem. It's a public hearing, so if we said 7:45. It must have been changed because I'm looking at it, it says 7:45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, could you give us 15 minutes? Just 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Have fun. Okay, we'll be back in 5 minutes.
are.
Okay, so we're reconvening the select board meeting after that short break. As I understand, there was a mistake in the agendas that were circulated, and the official agenda that was posted provided for a 7:30 hearing, and subsequent agendas that I received said 7:45. So I apologize for that. Things like that happen. So we're going to convene the hearing on the warrant articles at 7:30, which is about 7 minutes from now. In the meantime, we're going to take up the MBTA Communities Act Committee and start off by having a presentation of the slate. And then I think we'll probably break and have our hearings and then come back to the MBTA Communities Act. That sound good to everyone?
good.
Okay, because I know that two individuals interested in one of the warrant articles have been sitting in the audience for a long time, and in consideration of their getting back to whatever they want to do, we'll do it that way. Okay, so Chaz, are you going to present? We have both a slate as well as a charge. Why don't we start off with the slate first, and if there are any discussion or questions about that, we can have them answered.
Sure. And let me just say that for conversations that we have had with the community, particularly the petitioners of warrant article 24 of this town meeting, who kind of brought this issue up initially and suggested this potential option of getting to a head start, that we're grateful for their collaboration and willingness to work with us in order to get to this position, which is to really, as we said, get a head start on this work that they have been seeking to accomplish with the support of planning department staff, which I think is critical to the success of any potential option here. And so with that in mind, we have after consultation with petitioners and many other individuals, we have, I would also say on this too, we've received an immense amount of interest in this committee. And if your name is not on the list, we obviously apologize. We know your interest. We want you to be involved in this process in other ways. We want you to reach out proactively and be involved in the community and have these conversations because of the critical nature of this work. Your absence from this list is not a reflection of your interest or your ability to continue to have an impact on this conversation. So we strongly encourage you just to continue to be involved as community members in the process of thinking through how best to comply with the MBTA Communities Act by the deadline. So the slate for approval that we've recommended, what we will recommend to you is 8 people. It's Richard Benka, who would serve as chair, Rick Fredkin, Carol Gladstone, Ken Lewis, Linda Olson-Pelkey, David Pollack, Katha Seidman, and Neil Wachtinsky. The slate was selected, again, in consultation with the petitioners from warrant article 24, as well as many other community stakeholders. The aim here is to present a slate of individuals who have, who are, have not expressed, we've expressed potential skepticism of the Harvard Street proposal, of also individuals who are undecided and individuals who have expressed a willingness to be open-minded and engaged in productive solutions to this issue. I think that's the real key kicker here, is that this committee is going to be dedicated in a short period of time, because we really must have information available to present to the state for evaluation by midsummer, potential solutions to the MBTA Communities Act's strictures and requirements. So we're grateful to these individuals who have agreed to be, these open-minded, who have demonstrated and agreed to be open-minded and dedicated to looking for solutions to this problem here. So that's your 8-member recommended slate. Carrie, do you have anything to add? Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to add one thing, and that is we don't have a select board member on the committee. I mean, unless people disagree, I think that is probably not something that we should burden ourselves with. But I did talk to Dick Benka, and as a matter of fact, it was really Carla Benka who suggested this. And the committee, probably the chair or maybe Kara, would on a regular basis brief the select board on the work of the committee and take back to the committee any select board comments, suggestions, et cetera. So that has to be on a regular basis so that we do have a way of getting our views and concerns into the work of the committee. So
Presumably, the committee meetings will be public meetings and we'll have an opportunity to sit in
Right.
as members of the public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, my concern is that at those public meetings, the time that will be set aside for public comment and the sort of ability of the select board to get deep into the issues that they're raising is going to be limited.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, I think it's just a matter of hearing, I think Chaz has done his best, I'm sure, because to impress upon the members of the committee the proposed members of the committee, that complying with the MBTA Communities Act is not an option. A non-compliance is not an option. We have to come up with something that the state views as compliance or are very, very close to it. I think it's important for us to listen to the proceedings to get a sense of, to make sure that that's what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
But to participate as an active member, no problem.
And I just, we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the charge. I think a lot of members, let me say that none of the members of the proposed members have said, let's not comply with this. I agree. That's not an option. All of them have agreed that there needs to be compliance in some way with this law. I think one of the kind of the gamut of compliance there is really the question, and it will be the thing that informs the committee's discussions. I think some potential committee members have looked towards what you might call paper compliance, which is to do as little as possible to change the existing requirements of zoning in order to come into compliance with the MBTA Communities Act and leave it there. And other folks are interested in more robust alternative models that don't involve Harvard Street in some other way, which we sometimes call the Harvard minus plan, which is there a foundation that involves Harvard Street that does something a little different than what's been contemplated. And so there's a good gamut of opinions there on that front. And I think the charge reflects that there's room in the recommendations that the committee presents for those options. That the committee can make a recommendation of so-called paper compliance. But the committee must also make a recommendation. This is the real kicker. The committee must make a recommendation of at least compliance that generates some potential for growth. And the rationale there being that is effectively a compromise position that has the greatest likely chance, given the makeup of town meeting, of passing in the event that it needs a 2/3 majority to pass. So that's the kind of structure of the charge. And I know the committee members, while of differing minds on this, are also committed to a collegial process through which they can present more than one potential solution.
Quick comment, if I may.
Yeah.
I just want to say I regard this as, excuse me, a sort of a committee of superstars. I mean, these are really solid people, and with I would say a range of views. And in fact, one of the possible outcomes of all of this is that we end up reviewing a proposal that has even more zoning changes in it than the Harvard Street proposal might have. So I think there's a host of possibilities that are opened up by this, but the key thing is these are people who have got the background and have got the knowledge of the complexity of zoning and of the existing zoning map to actually come up with some plans that I think will be feasible plans and alternative plans to the direction that the Harvard Street corridor plan is going right now. Maybe there'll be a convergence by the time of town meeting. You never know. All kinds of possibilities. I want to thank the town administrator, especially for being open to a lot of input on how to craft this committee in a way that is going to be very, very productive. And I think he's done it.
Yes, I'll echo that sentiment.
Well, let me credit here to Kara and her team. Obviously, the planning department does a huge amount of work across these boundaries, and these are issues that have significant economic and developmental and political over and undertones. And they navigate this with just such great care and respect for the community. So all credit to Kara and her team.
Great. Okay, why don't we move on to the hearing on the warrant articles now?
We're going to vote on the,
I think the idea is that we would wait until we
and then vote.
have
Okay, okay.
discussion of the charge and then vote. Yeah,
Okay,
unless you're itching to vote.
No.
Okay. Okay. So
Over here.
okay, warrant article public hearings. Let's start with warrant article 20, amend the menstrual hygiene product access bylaw of the town's general bylaws. Currently Article 8.39 to change the article's duplicative numbering and add provisions relative to reproductive and gender health care. Ms. Stone.
Chair Green, nice to see you. I am Rebecca Stone, town meeting member from Precinct 3. I am speaking on behalf of the Brookline Commission for Women about warrant Article 20, the bylaw on reproductive and gender health access and equity. Not quite sure why it got characterized the way it did in the brief that the chair just read, but that's fine. This is proposing.
I was just reading what
I know
agenda.
I know you were doing it. Like I said, I don't know why it was written that way, but that's neither here nor there. I want to thank you for holding this hearing. As you all know, the Dobbs decision this past summer precipitated dramatic restrictions on reproductive and gender related health care around the country, an effort that has unfortunately picked up steam since then. We are in the midst of a new broadside against women's health and basic freedoms, as well as LGBTQ bodily autonomy and privacy. Since Dobbs' new and so-called trigger laws in 26 states mean that as many as 33 million persons capable of being pregnant in the United States do not or will not have access to safe abortion services. Many of the states restricting abortion have also passed laws banning or restricting gender-affirming care. Even discussing homosexuality in schools continues to face new bans, especially from Florida's governor, who has doubled down on these repressive laws, seeking to ban all such discussion even after 6th grade. That was most recently. He has now spearheaded legislative restrictions on discussing menstruation in school before 6th grade, which is a full year or two after many female-bodied students will have already experienced this normal part of development. And of course, he just signed a new law banning abortion after 6 weeks, when many pregnant people do not even know yet that they are pregnant. That means that hundreds, perhaps even thousands of pregnant people from across the South who had been going to Florida when their own states outlawed the procedure now have no safe option without significantly more costly and difficult travel. To add to the confusion and danger for patients and providers alike, in the last 2 weeks, we have absorbed the ruling from Texas Judge Kaczmarek that, if allowed to stand, could interrupt nationwide the use of mifepristone for medication abortion, even in protected states like Massachusetts. Adding insult to that injury, a federal appeals court repeated in its stay of the Kaczmarek, its limited stay of the Kaczmarek decision, some of the worst misinformation about medication abortion, which has been safely performed on millions and millions of people for decades around the world. Sowing confusion and fear is the whole point of these laws, and it is working. Doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies such as Walgreens, even in states where abortion remains legal in some instances, have already begun restricting access to care out of fear of legal or other reprisals. Confusion and fear makes providers in anti-abortion states reluctant to treat women suffering from incomplete miscarriage, a situation that can and already has led to unnecessary patient deaths. Confusion and fear means that pregnant individuals, especially the young, may not feel safe seeking timely, informed advice about a pregnancy, advice and care essential to any decision, whether it is to safely end the pregnancy or safely continue it for a healthy birth. States that have banned abortion have also passed laws calling for the arrest of anyone seeking, aiding, or providing any form of abortion. Those arrest warrants can be issued against providers here in Massachusetts who are already seeing people coming from other states. They can be issued against a Brookline resident attending college in an abortion banning state who receives safe and compassionate care back home here in Massachusetts and then returns to college. They can be issued against providers who give safe care here in Massachusetts, but then who travel for a conference or a board exam or a family gathering in an abortion banning state. This is maddening and frightening, and we can't do anything about these attacks in other states. But countering the new confusion with clarity in our local laws, clarity of intent, of action, and of consequence is what this warrant article is about. We are fortunate to be here in Massachusetts. It has some of the strongest reproductive health access laws in the nation, including the Roe Act and last summer's act expanding protections for reproductive and gender-affirming care. State laws rely for vigorous enforcement on cooperation at the municipal level. We as petitioners believe that the town has a special responsibility in the current environment to make that clear and unambiguous commitment to enforce the state's laws. Our article is based on a recent ordinance from Salem, Massachusetts, and it does two things. First, it creates a new bylaw that makes clear Brookline's commitment to support and protect from harassing litigation those seeking or providing full spectrum, safe, compassionate pregnancy, and gender-affirming care, including legal abortion. For the OBGYNs and other medical professionals who have joined us as co-petitioners, it is really important that this bylaw outlines consequences for non-compliance.
You have 1 minute.
In this way, it is far stronger than a non-binding resolution could ever be. Second, an important benefit to the proposed bylaw is the creation of a space in our general bylaws recognizing reproductive and gender health as an area of local policy concern. Simply naming it is a major step forward for gender rights and equity, and it also creates a home in our bylaws for related policies such as the 2019 Menstrual Product Access Bylaw. Making this kind of clear statement about our local laws is what Governor Healy did last week. She announced the Commonwealth has created a stockpile of mifepristone, and she issued an executive order that says the provider protection law that I referenced passed last July will be interpreted to protect pharmacists and providers who continue to prescribe and dispense mifepristone. This article promises that Brookline will hold itself and its employees to that same standard to protect patients and providers who may face legal action from outside of Massachusetts. The article has the support of our Chief of Police, our Director of Public Health, the Advisory Committee on Public Health in a unanimous vote, and the Advisory Subcommittee on Human Services, also in a unanimous vote for the slightly amended version that I believe you have in front of you. I hope it will have your strong support as well, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, any questions from the board? I know it's a public hearing, Devin.
There's a second speaker, right?
Well, you
No?
have reached 7 minutes.
Oh,
Oh, I'm so sorry. My presentation on this article has gotten longer since we introduced it because of what's happened in the country since we introduced it.
okay. That's fine.
So
Arden,
in-
did you want to speak on this? Okay. Okay. Oh, we'll open the hearing. Okay. Step up.
Good evening. Thank you, Select Board and Chair Green. I am Arden Reamer, co-petitioner, town meeting member in Precinct 8, and candidate for Select Board. Thank you, Rebecca Stone and the Commission for Women, for speaking to the unequivocal necessity of our bylaw change, Warrant Article 20, protecting reproductive rights and gender-affirming care in Brookline. I am sharing with you this evening my personal story as it relates to abortion services in Brookline and the culture that prevails both historically and at present to act in violent and/or extreme ways in our community and nationally to curtail this right. Here's my story. In the early 1990s, between my junior and senior years of college, I became pregnant. Just to be crystal clear on the timeline, this was before the morning after pill was approved by the FDA and available. I lived here in Brookline. This is where I grew up. I was home from college for the summer, and there was never a question as to whether or not I would have an abortion. It was a straightforward alternative to an unintended situation. But this is Brookline, and we had two providers at the time, Planned Parenthood and preterm. And just to be clear, my parents supported me and my family could afford it because these factors almost always are involved in a young person's decision, as well as access to services. 2 years later, John Salvi III went on a shooting rampage at these two clinics, killing 2 women employees and injuring 5, and the abortion landscape in Brookline and in Massachusetts was changed forever. That was 1994. On April 7th, 2023, we received a decision from a federal judge in Texas with an order banning the pill mifepristone, used in more than half the abortions across the country, and now we are facing dueling rulings, a temporary stay, and headed to a conservative majority Supreme Court. In addition, in the past 3 months, 10 states have passed laws banning gender-affirming care for young people. We come before you today to ask that the Select Board unanimously support our bylaw change because the need to unequivocally, lawfully, and proactively protect a person's right to reproductive services and gender-affirming care is under assault, just as it always has been and will be in Brookline, in Massachusetts, and in the United States to our detriment. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Alec Leibovitz. You've been promoted to a panelist. Your 3 minutes will begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Devin, and good evening, everyone. My name is Alec Leibovitz, a town meeting member in Precinct 8, and also a co-petitioner of Warrant Article 20. Let me first thank Arden and Rebecca for those powerful and informative statements. It's always nice to follow the two of them because they don't leave me too much I need to cover. I wanted to make a couple brief points to the board about Warrant Article 20, why we think it's crucial, and also why we think this model is the right way to go for Brookline. So I think we actually do have a very strong analogous model of a similar type of action taken by municipalities, and that comes in the debate around federal immigration enforcement. The sanctuary city model proved to be quite effective in limiting and restricting the use of local personnel and local resources in the enforcement of federal immigration laws that in many cases those municipalities objected to on the grounds of values and frankly just being disruptive to the community. There is no legal obligation for municipalities under federal law to assist in the enforcement of such immigration activities, and as a result, local ordinances similar to this one were not only legally sound but effective in making those communities not party to the enforcement of those federal codes that they disagreed with. Similarly, there is no legal obligation placed upon Brookline at this present time that we cooperate in the enforcement of state laws that I think all of us would consider draconian and misplaced, passed in, say, Texas or Florida, for example. I think Rebecca mentioned the key word here, which is clarity. What Warrant Article 20 does is make clear to residents, providers, and to be frank, what are likely to be medical refugees seeking care in Massachusetts that they cannot receive in their home states, that we will not, under any circumstances, use town employees, town funds, or town resources to assist in essentially another state tracking them down for retribution or punishment after receiving what is recognized rightly in the Commonwealth as necessary medical care. And the final point I'd like to make is I think clarity here, in addition to being important for residents and patients and of course providers, is key for our town employees and in giving them certainty that they can act in a way that conforms with the community's values and with our established bylaws and not necessarily be placed in the middle.
You have 30 seconds.
Another state enforcing their own laws. I think there are many employees that could potentially, without a bylaw like Warrant Article 20, be placed in difficult situations without a statement of policy by the town. This eliminates all uncertainty and makes clear that we will stand by our values and refuse to assist in denying residents and medical refugees the care that they need, and that is legally available in Brookline and Massachusetts. I would ask and urge the board to please unanimously support favorable action on warrant Article 20. Thank you.
The next person signed up for public comment is Anthony Ishak. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable. Your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you. Anthony Ishak, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1, and also co-petitioner on this warrant article. My comments will be very brief because the speakers before me have covered this area pretty thoroughly and in excellent detail. I speak to you today as a healthcare provider and as a pharmacist. Part of the reason I'm in support of this warrant article and I signed up for it is there's been a culture lately in terms of questioning science and questioning healthcare. This warrant article kind of helps to buttress against that philosophy that's occurring in many different states and in different areas around this country. I think what highlights this is that we're trying to maintain the relationship between providers and patients and let them have the discussion and take care of whatever issues are urgent and they would like to address. There's certainly no reason for government and those who may not believe in science or may not have the health background to be involved in those discussions. This warrant article is one simple way of protecting that relationship between providers and patients and allowing them to make the decision that is best for them. I join with all the other co-petitioners in requesting that you vote favorable action on this warrant article. Thank you.
At this time, there are 15 virtual attendees and 4 in person. No one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Mike.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry. You just
nothing,
had your
nothing
finger
to
up.
say except let's close the hearing and vote.
Well, actually, I'd like to say something.
All right.
You know, it's kind of dangerous to talk about a man's interest in the decision of a woman to have an abortion or engage in other type of medical procedures. At the same time, it's important that men really be part of this campaign. This morning I was watching Morning Joe, and they had a really moving interview. Mika Brzezinski interviewed this woman from Florida who was pregnant, and the baby was not viable, and she was forced to carry essentially a dead baby to term. I mean, that's just incredible. Well, what I found most moving was her husband, and his description of how that really affected him, because it was his wife who was being traumatized by this law that prevented her from getting the proper medical attention. He also talked about how it's traumatizing their son, who has to watch his mother's belly expand and then not see a sibling at the end of this process. I mean, men, this is a decision for women, not even their husbands, I think. But still, I think it's really important for men to step forward and talk about the fact that this is in our interest, not just a woman's interest, because these are our wives, our daughters, our siblings, our mothers, and we are hurt significantly by how they are hurt. I mean, it's not just women who want to have abortions, as we know. I mean, the drug methylprednisolone, or however you pronounce it, is used when a woman tragically has a miscarriage, and is used to help that miscarriage go through the natural stages without the pain and suffering that would otherwise occur. So, I support this. I don't want to vote tonight because I think Miriam would want to vote on this also. But, this is very important. And I just want to urge the men in the world to step forward and see this as something that we really have to fight for and defend women, because it's in our interest and the interest of our sons and the interest of our brothers and others. So I have to say. Any other discussion?
No, I agree that I know Miriam would like to be here for
Yeah.
this in particular, so I certainly agree that we should wait.
Okay. good.
Yep.
Okay. Unless there are any other
No.
people in the audience wanting to speak, I'll close the hearing and we'll move on to, let's see, Article 17.
Are we moving back to the MBTA?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
God, okay.
Okay.
Oh, I assumed that you would go through all of the warrant.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
maybe we should. Okay.
Just
let's
that was
let's
technically
use-
the-
Okay.
You were using the
Okay,
right
good.
idea. You had-
Confused me. I thought I was
No,
wrong.
sorry about that.
Okay. Warrant Article 17, amend the general bylaws to change marijuana to cannabis and to permit 2 additional storefront cannabis retailers licenses for equity applicants. Donnell O'Neill is going to speak.
Hello, Bernard. May I put this up there, please, in the spirit of town meeting from 2017?
What is that?
Saxophone.
Oh.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, this is great. Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah.
Are you not going to play it?
No, not. Hopefully, I don't.
Is
have
that
to.
by my seat? Do you expect me to play it? Because I can't play it.
Hopefully, the next person coming in that seat will bring peace to the board and everything else. So thank you. My name is Darnell O'Neill, senior town meeting member from Precinct 4. I'm also on the advisory committee. Before you to speak about warrant article 17 and later on warrant article 23. Where to start? So first of all, I appreciate allowing the saxophone to be up there. So the advisory committee does something I know the select board probably doesn't have time to do, but they have a questionnaire and we're allowed to answer certain questions from goals and benefits and so on, which I felt was really helpful in going through this process. So I guess I'd like to start off on, with the AC second question is goals and benefits. And, the goal in this warrant article, because there's 2 sections, we can take up the second part next, changing marijuana to cannabis, is, for one, racial and economic empowerment, okay? The lack thereof in the cannabis industry. We do have an alumni from Brookline High School, Tito Jackson, who jumped through the hurdles, and Boston prioritizes Boston. So he's able to get that license and start a cannabis establishment, which was inspiring. I wish we could do that here in our own town. And that's yet to be done. So the benefits, another benefit, revenue, much needed revenue. We've always talked about revenue for town. How do we bring in more money? And then before this new stream of money came in, we were talking about overrides back then, but not so drastic. The revenue that we were able to get from the 3 running cannabis establishments have been good, and have helped. Have been helpful for many different departments. Keeping Brookline's promise is big to me. And the reason why I do have that saxophone up there is that was during the gear warrant article, if someone can remember, and looking through our town in a different kind of lens. And I feel we haven't done that as efficient as we wanted to, as a whole, as a town in general. There's been efforts from this board back in 2018 to expand the cannabis industry to equity applicants and try to pick up where we didn't even get going because certain folks were grandfathered in. So I know you have a long night ahead of you, so I don't want to keep up too much of this, but it is needed. Regardless what happens in May, I'm keeping this on the table. I'm not going to pull it off at town meeting just for extra protection for the town in more ways than one. And down to monetary fines, just us having something on the books, on record, that we are trying to follow the new cannabis legislation, state legislation. We're doing our best. So that's another reason why I'm keeping that on the table at town meeting, regardless of what happens. The $1 billion industry, and it's just I want to say, I think it's the number one crop in Massachusetts. It beat out the cranberries, and so but for minorities not to be involved in it, or not even have the opportunity to get involved, I just it doesn't feel right. It isn't right. So I would like to pass it over to any questions y'all have in regards to this, and then I actually for your support on this, like this board did back in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to open the hearing immediately, or do you want to have some
I have a
discussion?
question.
Okay.
So first of all, I for one, I'm going to vote for this to recommend approval at town meeting, and I'll certainly vote for it at town meeting. But my question is, what happens if the referendum that puts a cap on licenses passes? Does this supersede that? Does it stay in play? What is that? Does that govern what, these two things are in conflict?
That's a great question, Mike. So, and council asked the same thing, and would I still keep it on the table? Yes, because technically there's a 5th license out there right now, and we're not abiding, the state, the liquor license agreement we have, and the whole 9. So yes, I'm keeping it up there, like I said, for more reasons than one, to protect us. Like this, the monetary fines is a serious thing. That the state created their own racial equity advancement fund. Okay, but this has teeth. So I don't want to get to the warrant article, but you can look it up. It's in the warrant, in the explanation as well. The name of the trust, but the monetary fines from failure to comply with the new state legislation, cannabis legislation, goes to this pot of money for capital and for startup money and grants for equity applicants to start up cannabis retail shops. So there's reasons why I'm keeping it on. That was a great question, Mike. But I feel like it needs to be there to protect it. There's a 5th license out there right now.
Okay.
No matter what we say.
So there's no conflict as long as that 5th license is out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Because it goes by. I'm not trying to change what we already have by the 20% and the whole 9. You know what I mean? That changes nothing. So we are where we are right now. Okay.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
One part of this warrant article that I actually like, although it's a small piece of it, and that is changing marijuana to cannabis, because marijuana has a history that's racist.
Section 2.
Pardon me?
That's section 2. Thank you.
And I think marijuana is used so widely that the sort of historical connection to racist stereotyping is kind of not as significant. But I think it's probably good to change it because of that history. I think that's an important part of the bill also. So.
Thank you for saying that, Bernard. I mean, because that marijuana thing goes way back to 1840, Mexico, and I mean, there's over 600 terms marijuana slang, if I may, and like I said, it just brings a negative stereotype to to cannabis. There's one more thing I'd like to say while I'm standing here. I know my time's limited, Devin, but back to the liquor stores and down to this ballot question, all right? The cap question is, there's been different reasons why people want it. The argument used to be the kids. I haven't heard that argument anymore since the statement came out about the DPH and the number one drug being consumed, say, would be alcohol for our youth in Brookline. And not cannabis. I think cannabis was number 3. So the liquor stores, we don't have a cap on the liquor stores, and it seems that liquor consumption is a major problem that we have amongst our youth in town. Last,
we do have a cap on liquor stores.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, got it.
We have so many liquor stores. So I guess the last comment I see Charles is, well, to what Bernard was saying in the marijuana, like I wanted to put that number 1 as a thing to get the discussion going. So I appreciate your comments, Bernard, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Any further questions?
Charles has a Chaz.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chaz.
No, I wanted to add on to the petitioner's comment. And I think, I don't want to speak obviously for the moderator, but it's my understanding that in the event that question 3 passes, the cap is set at 4 retail marijuana establishments, that the most obvious harmonizing construction of this warrant article would be the cap is 4. However, the select board may authorize up to 2 more for equity applicants, 2 more than the cap, whatever the cap is. So that would be the harmonizing construction here. So if question 3 passes and the town caps the number of retail marijuana establishments at 4, and then this warrant article passes and is approved by the Attorney General, the harmonizing construction of those would be 4, except in the event of an equity applicant, in which case the select board may authorize up to 6.
Oh, I like that language, Chaz. Thank you for that. That makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
May I say something?
Yes, John.
So, Danelle, thank you so much. And for those who are interested, Google search Danelle O'Neill saxophone town meeting, and they'll come to the tape, right? Yeah. The tape exists of Danelle playing at a beautiful moment in a beautiful way. Let there be peace on earth at town meeting. I think there are people who are listening tonight who are saying to themselves, wait a minute, whoa, we've been through so many iterations of this, back and forth over cannabis. Is what that we're hearing tonight that it won't be over even with this, question that's going to be voted on in the town election. And the message, in fact, is it won't be over even with what we're voting on in this May town election. And that's because if and when, and it's going to happen, this article comes before town meeting, let's say the townspeople do vote yes on question 3, which would cap the licenses at the current 4. What you will hear said at town meeting, I guarantee, is that there was a vote in 2016 by the people of Brookline. And some people might remember 2016. It featured a presidential contest between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And the turnout in that election in Brookline was phenomenal. Roughly 28,000 voters out, 29,000 voters out of around 38,000 registered voters. That's unheard of in a local election. There won't be that kind of a turnout in this election in May. In fact, we'll be lucky if we get, a quarter of that, we might get a third of that, but I don't think we will. I think we'll probably get around a quarter of that. And in that election in 2016, those favoring the current licensing position were 60%.
That is those favoring the no cap.
No cap. Thank you, Mike. So I don't think town meeting can simply say, well, we'll ignore that there's actually been 2 referendums on this. I think people are going to want to make comparisons between the referendum where there was a turnout of 29,000 people and 60% of them voted to have the current situation versus a later referendum, which is the referendum we're going to have in May, which will have a much smaller number of people. And who knows what the result is, but I think we can't just sort of say there's only one time when the people of Brookline have spoken on the marijuana question. There will have been 2, and that will, I think, enter into the discussion of Danelle's article. And that's the only point I'm trying to make.
Well put.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Anyone want to speak at this public hearing?
At this time, there are 14 virtual attendees and 3 in person. No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, let's close the hearing. And we will, I assume we don't want to vote now, but we'll take it up probably next week or some other time.
Well, sooner rather than later, but yeah.
Okay, Devin, next week.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
to me.
Thank you, Danelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget your saxophone.
Oh, well, I think I have one more.
Oh, okay.
So-
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. The saxophone
The clock
stays.
starts over again. You have 7 more minutes.
Okay.
Yep, right here. It's you.
You're on.
So is it okay, Bernard?
Wait, let me introduce it. Let's see. Okay, next, warrant article 23. Resolution requesting the select board, town administrator, and human resources director to work with the police department to adopt and implement an in-car and body worn camera policy for the police department. So tell us about this warrant article.
All right, well, shoot, when did we have
It
this
it
on
was
it?
recently amended by advisory.
Yes,
Okay,
so
make
that's
sure
what I
you-
want to say. So I want the my main motion is going to be Genesis Public Safety, the advisory committee's public safety subcommittee's recommendation, which also includes PFACT and Devin, were you able to circulate?
Yes.
That was in the packet? Okay, so it's in the packet, so people could see it. Basically, we need it. There's funding, the state funding for it, there's federal funding for it. I guess I'm the petition of it, but something came across my mind seeing the motorcycle police officers going up for the marathon. If that's going to be try to get that in, does something like that work on the bike, on the motorcycles, the body cameras for motorcycles instead of the in-car? You know what I mean? Is there something for the motorcycles? I'll look into it. The state, they have an awesome policy and program that has to do a lot to do with vendors, and I'm pretty sure I sent that to y'all as well. That I'm hoping later on we can dig through it, and by the time town meeting hits, that there will be a lot more questions answered on price and storage. Because we're looking at storage for like 3 years of storage, and Paul Campbell mentioned that at the public safety hearing. So I don't want to get into much. I'm asking for your support on this. The police are okay with it. The people are okay with it. So I just appreciate you guys are supporting this. And that's it, really.
So,
Any questions?
so it's a lot of this is contingent on decision of an arbitrator.
Yeah.
Chaz, do you have anything to add, or can you sort of orient us?
Sure. What I just say is that, we were in arbitration, state mandated arbitration between the police union and the town regarding the contract for the previous 3 years. And one of the issues that the town put into dispute for potential resolution in this contract is the issue of body worn cameras and dash cameras. And so that is an issue that the town has placed as something it would like to see incorporated into its contract. Ultimately, that decision is for the arbitrator to make. We expect that decision imminently, probably before town meeting, and that will inform our progress going forward. I will say that the bargaining team has made progress with the union on many key issues regarding body worn cameras. Car cameras are further back in line, but obviously are issues that need to be addressed there as well. They're not the same thing. They have different considerations that need to be taken into account. Similarly, the third issue on that, by the way, is GPS tracking of cars or an equipment, not for disciplinary purposes, unless an officer is already subject to discipline, but for the purpose of tracking and ensuring that in the event that officers are unreachable, that we know where they are. So those are the three issues that have come into that were the town, three major issues related to this, the town placed into contention as things they would like to be resolved in the police union contract. So once we have clarity on that in advance of town meeting, we should know what the potential next steps are. I am hopeful that regardless of that outcome, we can continue to have that productive working relationship with the union, resolve the outstanding issues between the parties regarding these policies, and implement these policies in an effective way. I'd also note that if you look at the budget for this coming fiscal year, you can see that there is a line item in the budget for body worn cameras. We are operating under the assumption that this is happening this fiscal year, and we are putting that marker down as an indicator that we hear the community's desire for this to be implemented sooner rather than later. We know that it is a difficult process and that people are impatient, but that commitment in the budget is a commitment to getting this done.
Thank you, Chaz.
Chaz, you said this fiscal money's in this fiscal year's budget.
This
Did you
coming
mean-
fiscal year's budget,
This coming
FY24.
fiscal year, okay.
Yes.
CIP.
Okay. Any other discussion? This is a public hearing. Devin, do we have anyone wanting to speak from the public?
At this time, there are 14 virtual attendees and 3 in person. No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, let's close the hearing. And thank you, Danelle.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful evening. I'm gonna get home to my wonderful wife and family. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Danelle.
All right.
Thanks.
Serenade her with your saxophone. I wish I had some talent in something.
It's not too late. It's not too late. Then I'll give you lessons.
I'll bring him my clarinet anytime you want.
Okay.
Got a promise or a threat?
Yes.
Both.
I do have a guitar, but I'm not very good. Okay, next. Warrant Article 21, a new article of the town's bylaws to establish training, notice, and reporting requirements for in-holders to prevent human trafficking. Mr. Davis, would you like to speak?
I'm Jonathan Davis, town meeting member from Precinct 10 and a co-petitioner of Article 21. I want to thank you for holding a hearing on Article 21. As a preface, I should say that the advisory committee has made 2 friendly amendments to Article 21, and I'll be referring to the article with the advisory committee's amendments. This is about hotel sex trafficking, which is a national problem. It often goes unrecognized. The National Trade Association for the Lodging Industry, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, has a national campaign to try to deter hotel sex trafficking. Similarly, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has a campaign, and several national hotel brands, including Hilton and Marriott, require anti-sex trafficking practices. The purpose of the article is to incentivize Brookline hotels to behave in certain ways that help deter sex trafficking and to make these practices permanent patterns of behavior, not only for current hotels and their current ownership and management, but also for new hotels that may be created in the future, and also for hotels when in the future ownership changes or new management is hired. In other words, the article seeks to make permanent and institutionalize as a culture, both now and for the future, certain hotel practices that are known to help to deter sex trafficking. Hotels in Brookline are not legally required to behave in these ways. There is no state legislation in Massachusetts, no local law in Massachusetts that requires such behavior. Whether a hotel does or does not is a business decision that a hotel can adopt or abandon as it calculates its business interest. This applies to both existing hotels and also to new hotels as they may come along. Even national chains are not required by Massachusetts law or by local law to behave in these ways. It's a business decision for the chains. Many hotels are independently owned and operated. Some contract with national brands to operate in accordance with the brand's practices. This is sometimes called flagging. But whether to continue to operate under a flag or to drop the flag and operate completely alone is a business decision for the individual hotel. The article requires hotels to train a defined set of employees in identifying and appropriately responding to signs of sex trafficking. The hotels choose the training entity. If a hotel holds an inholder license issued after the effective date of the article, when the hotel then applies for a license renewal, the hotel must provide the select board or its designee with information about the training entity, the content of the training, the number of employees and their job titles or descriptions who received the training, the number of employees who did not, and the dates of training. The article also requires hotels to post and maintain 6 anti-trafficking notices where hotel employees are present, but hotel guests are prohibited or discouraged from entering, and for hotels to give copies of the notices and information about the locations of the posting to the police department and to the select board or its designee. The notices are to be chosen by the hotel, but created by appropriate training entities. The purpose of the notices is to remind the employees of their training and to be vigilant. The police department may check on the posting and the notices and report its concerns, if it has any, to the select board or its designee. Lastly, the article requires that if a hotel holds an inholder license issued after the effective date of the article, when the hotel applies for a license renewal, the hotel must provide the select board or its designee with a report of when employees are required to enter or surveil guest rooms when not responding to requests by guests. This is intended to provide information to the select board and in that way to try to normalize best practices among Brookline hotels. For example, I understand from Hilton that it requires room entry or at least surveillance after 2 days and Marriott after 3. The Brookline Chamber of Commerce supports the article. David Gladstone, the president of the chamber, has written, and I'm quoting, "The chamber supports this initiative and stands against human trafficking. We applaud our partner hotels that have already taken the steps outlined in this article to keep people safe, educate their employees, and mitigate the risks of human trafficking. By email, Paul Sainer of EDAB, co-chair, has written that EDAB will not be hearing the article and that he believes that hotels in the town have no objection to the article. The acting chief of police, Pastor, has written that the police department has no objections to the draft of the article that she reviewed, which was before the advisory committee's amendments. Most recently, the advisory committee, by a vote of 15-5 with no abstentions, endorsed the article with 2 friendly amendments. The petitioners welcome the amendment and hope that the advisory committee's amendment will be taken up as the main motion at town meeting. I hope that the select board will join all of these thoughtful people in recommending favorable action on the article as the advisory committee would amend it. Thank you for your time.
Is the advisory committee's amendments in our packet? Devin, do you know?
I don't believe I received that. No.
Okay, could you explain what their amendments are, and Jonathan?
Yes, the amendments were as follows. In the portion of the article, and I can, in the portion of the article that deals with reporting about training to the select board or its designee. Just a second. Just a second. Yeah, that would be paragraph 8 dot XX.2. The amendment took out listing the actual names of employees who received the training, and the amendment instead substituted the number of employees who received the training, and similarly took out naming the employees who should have received training but didn't, and instead substituted the number of employees who didn't receive the training. That was one of the amendments. The other amendment was in 8.XX.3, which reduced the number of notices to 6 prominent locations instead of being all locations in the hotel, so-called back of the house locations, where employees would be present but guests would not be. And instead, the advisory committee reduced that to simply 6 prominent locations back of the house. There was a correction of what was termed a scrivener's error in 8.XX.3 to add after reporting to the select board or its designee. They put that in also. All of these amendments are friendly amendments, and the petitioners all welcome them and think that they're very helpful.
So the scrivener's error was in 8.XX what?
0.3.
3, okay. Okay, Mike?
I have a question. I know it seems to me that this has really come up as a consequence of the concern about the ownership of the Iris Hotel on Webster Street. And I have a question for you. Would this, it's a hypothetical question, and honestly, it has nothing to do with my vote, but I am curious as to whether this would have come forward at all if not for the fact that we had the discussion about and the concerns that were expressed by many people about the ownership of the Iris.
Ownership of the Iris. No, it would have come up as a result of the presentation at the initial presentation at the planning board by the spokesman for the hotel, the proposed hotel, where it was explained or presented that this would be a hotel that would be an extended stay hotel where there would be no staffing at night, where there would be no room service or even for changing towels unless requested by the guests. The rationale being that it's cheaper to operate a hotel this way because
Yeah.
laundry costs money.
Yep.
And staffing costs money.
Yep.
And there was no there was, again, this was an extended stay hotel, and which could be up to 90 days. And there was no discussion at all about safety issues or, and no discussion about training of staff. That's what triggered this whole thing. It wasn't because who the proponent was. It was about the presentation that the proponent made, that this was going to be, how should I put it, sloppily, poorly run, without attention to what the risks were.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Before we open up to the public, you said that EDAB believes that the hotels in town will go along with this. Do you have any independent verification of that? Have you contacted the hotels?
The hotels do have counsel, which is Jennifer DePazo Gilbert. I did not contact her. She had been present and made a presentation in November of 22 when the earlier version of this article came up. But I can tell you that the Chamber of Commerce supports the initiative and
No, you said
applauds
that.
our partner hotels.
I'm sorry, what?
The Chamber of Commerce supports this.
Right.
And has written by its president, we applaud our partner hotels that have already taken the steps outlined in this article to keep people safe.
My question is,
Yeah.
have you contacted the hotels
Directly? No.
directly?
No.
Okay.
I will amplify that by saying that because the hotels were very proactive in reaching out to their own council and then having, I think there were 5 hotels that were doing that back in, for the November version of the article. I and my co-petitioners were confident that they would be watching this with equal interest, if not more.
I sure would like to know what they think.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be helpful.
I'm sure we will before this is over.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Because Jennifer DePazo Gilbert, I think, tunes into our meetings.
Right.
So if you are, Jennifer, we would like to have that answered. Okay, this is a public hearing. And Devin, could you tell us if anyone would like to speak?
At this time, there are 11 virtual attendees. There are 2 in person. No one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, so let's close this hearing. And any questions from the select board? None here? No? Okay, none here either. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we've done everything except the MBTA charge, as I understand, right? You got the naming committee, we got all the warrant articles, budget reviews. Okay, so let's go back to the charge for the MBTA charge or committee charge. Jazz, did you want to present that?
Sure. And thank you. We have the charge, which was circulated to the petitioners of warrant article 24, as well as individuals interested in being a part of the committee for comment and question, and revised accordingly today and published as part of your packet. We received comments from a wide variety of sources on this to kind of discuss how best to effectuate the aims of warrant article 24, as well as the broader question of compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. And so, the document has changed somewhat from its initial draft, and I think for the better, in the sense that it has made clear, right, the aim here. If you look in the document of the second paragraph, it's to focus on developing potential options that could, but need not include portions of the Harvard Street study that seek to minimize adverse impacts to commercial districts and existing businesses, include at least one option likely to incentivize the creation of additional housing units that are suitable for all stages of life and income levels, and 3, take into consideration the location of additional housing relative to available capacity for open space, schools, and other public infrastructure. And so as part of that, one of the major suggestions that some of the petitioners raised was the 4th bullet point in the towards the bottom, which is evaluating the possibility of compliance through the use of, but not necessarily limited to, existing 2-family and multifamily zones. That's more towards the paper compliance end of the spectrum, and something that is important, obviously, for this committee to consider and evaluate thoroughly. We also added materials regarding considering and resolving, to the extent feasible, the unintended consequences of updating zoning, including impacts of the MBTA Communities Act parking model, negative impacts on existing businesses, climate resiliency, and the potential demolition of existing housing stock or loss of character defining features of the town. We added material about notifying commercial tenants as well as property owners of at least one public hearing regarding any proposed zoning changes that this committee may put in front of the select board, to ensure that there is robust public comments and that commercial tenants are involved in that conversation, since I know their voice has been requested by a number of people on all sides of this conversation. And we pushed the deadline to July 14th or as soon thereafter as reasonably feasible. We've also included language in there to reflect the fact that the planning department staff will be staffing this committee and providing it with the support that it needs to ensure that these proposals are complete and ready for that function. Some of the one particular request that was made by some petitioners that I think is already reflected in this document is, expressed language saying that, the planning department will make use of the particular modeling that the state has this modeling tools that the state offers and run those options by the state. And I think what that really is asking is to make sure that, the recommendations of this board or of this committee are transmitted to the board and vetted by the state appropriately in time for town meeting. I think the order of operations there is one where the committee makes the recommendation with the planning department staffing assistance to help develop it into the most robust and legal recommendations possible. The committee puts it in front of you, the select board. You as the select board decide which of the proposals you would like the state to evaluate for whether or not it meets with the MBTA Communities Act requirements. In that way, you are the ultimate arbiters of the options that will be submitted to town meeting regarding that. And as you pointed out, Bernard, that you on the select board will have kind of that final say, which is really your prerogative there, right? In talking to the planning board, because the planning board has to make the ultimate proposals about what potential alternatives will be presented to town meeting. So I think we have covered all of the sort of proposed recommendations from the various petitioners. Again, we thank everyone for their comments and for their interest in this. I think under the time constraints involved, it was a very helpful iterative process and everyone's comments were very helpful. We think that this satisfies the aim of the petitioners, and if we vote it through, we can get started on this work right away. I think it's really important to get started sooner rather than later, with an aim towards meeting at least every other week through Zoom or whatever method is most convenient for this committee to commence its work, think through available options, do the kind of heavy lifting necessary to have viable proposals for your consideration by mid-July.
Great, thank you. Any discussion?
Well,
Questions?
yeah, it's mid-April,
Yes. And
May, June, that's 3 months.
Yep.
It may be doable. It's going to take a lot of staff support, and the 8 people who are on that committee are going to have to be meeting pretty frequently. My concern is the timeline. I think you've got the charge itself, the language of the charge itself is more than fine. It's very well put together. I take my hat off to those of you who drafted it. You did a great job. But we'll see. Well, it's July 14th or as soon thereafter as reasonably feasible. That says it all. Let's hope it's feasible.
yeah, I commend you for putting this charge together and incorporating all the various viewpoints
Yeah,
and
right.
interest and complaints that you had to coordinate to get a final product. But I think it's a good product, and
Yep.
it's going to be tight. But this was under a tight schedule from the very beginning.
Right, that's true. And I mean, it's a strong committee. They're experienced people with varying views. And the question is whether they can work together towards a common view, or whether we're going to end up with a minority report and a majority report, or God help us, a 4 and 4.
Yeah.
But hopefully they'll come up with I appreciate that they need to come in with 2 alternatives, but hopefully they'll come in with 2 alternatives that they all agree on.
Yeah. Well, the chair, Dick Benka, is not someone I agree with all the time, but I mean, if anyone can do this.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh.
I've expressed my concerns to Dick, and he's said the right things as far as I'm concerned. He's made a good case.
Okay. How about you, John? Any thoughts? And no?
No,
Okay, let's move on.
Looks good to me. Looks good to me.
Okay, we're voting on the MBTA Communities Act charge, as well as the slate that we discussed earlier this morning, this evening, excuse me. I move approval of both the charge and the slate. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. John?
Aye.
Mary's not here. Mark?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your vacation, Chaz, and I think we can end this meeting unless someone objects.
Oh.
It's over.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.